Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today is I don't even know what day it is, 14th, July 14th. And this is really the second day of budget deliberations. But at this point, each commissioner has identified some priorities and sent those to staff, and staff is bringing those together. We're not making any decisions really at this meeting, no final decisions, but continued discussion. We do not take public comment at this meeting, but you're welcome to provide public comment via email or by phone, or join us on Wednesday for our general business meeting at 5:30 and provide your comments during our general public comment session. We are planning to go from 9 to 12 today, and we'll start, I think, with a little bit of an overview from Sarah and team.
Thanks, commissioners. So Brooke worked really hard over the weekend to compile the various items that commissioners asked to have further deliberation about. From what I can, my rough math was 47. You've got 47 things to talk about over the next 3 days, 3 mornings. So I'll have to keep moving. And so commissioners have a written copy in front of you. I'm gonna share my screen. And so you can, oh, no, do not leave webinar. You don't have a copy? And some of these, I think will be pretty easy to kind of work through on the consensus. So here we go. It's going to be hard to read, so I'll try to make it a little bigger. So these items have 5 commissioners at least mentioned that we need to kind of talk through certain things here. And so the first of which is commissioner contingency, which, I think we probably could come back and do at a later time. The other, let's see, I'm trying to get a view here that lets you see what you need to see. The next one is there were 5 commissioners then who were interested in these things. The additional 0.38 FTE for the communications administrative assistant, the Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area, half of 1 FT, which why can't we just say 0.5? Collections management assistant one time, artist helping the homeless purchase technology tracking system. So here, there was some confusion on the spreadsheet. So the artist helping the homeless item, the mirror digital recovery app, and the barrier reduction have been funded. They were included in my proposed budget as funded out of special alcohol. So those are already funded. They just didn't get on your worksheet right. So I apologize for that. It shows like they weren't funded on your worksheet, and your budget options, it shows as funded. Right, Jake? I got that. And Brooke, I'm right there. So
those 4 items that are under special alcohol.
Yeah. Go ahead.
3, right?
These 3 right here. Client tracking, digital recovery app, barrier reduction one time. Those are as included as funding. And then later on, when you get down to the last one, the unused 2025 carryover was already funded. It sounds like there was interest in moving that to the municipalities fight addiction. So we can talk about that separately if commissioners want, but I guess I just wanted to note that these were included as funded in my budget. And I apologize that the spreadsheet didn't quite reflect that.
So the other thing under special alcohol is the DECA.
That was not included for funding. So we do need, if that's something that commissioners are interested in talking about, we can talk about that. Okay. But so can I go ahead, since these were included as funded, I'm gonna hide these rows, Brooke, because they're already included, and they will be marked as consensus. They'll be marked as funded on the consensus spreadsheet. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay, then the next one. Oh, look at me. It's making me do things, Jake. All right. I'm not going to try to hide. Oh, yeah. All right. Then the permanent supportive housing project. That looks like there's going to be some conversation around that. Housing Authority supplement to New Horizons. the zero suicide position, tenants to homeowners, one-time capital, Cardinal Housing Network, one-time capital, and the mirror one that there was some, it is currently funded out of the behavioral health sales tax. And this was really just unused 2025 funds, which is why I felt like that was appropriate because you funded it in 2025 with behavioral health sales tax. So if we moved it to the municipalities fight, we could certainly pay for it out of there if people wanted to, but
I'm
since,
sorry, you said that really fast. It could be
Okay.
paid out of where?
so it's currently funded in 2025 out of the behavioral health sales tax. So I don't know, commissioners, if you want it, in the interest of time, do you want to talk about each of these, or do you want to just talk about the ones where there are some notes on the cell, like starting with the permanent supportive housing grant?
I was just going to suggest just the ones with the notes, and I was going to stay on the one that you just talked about because it sounds like maybe were there notes from commissioners about the unused funds for mirror? I thought that one maybe seems the simplest,
Yeah.
and then we could go talk about the
Yeah.
public health and HUD grant.
Yep.
I made the suggestion to possibly move mirrors, unused funds over to the Fighting Addiction Fund, simply because it aligned really well. We have funds available there and we could free up funds in other areas. So I thought it could be a conversation that we could have.
What is our capacity in the municipalities fight addiction?
About $445,000. It's on one of your first couple sheets there on the fund balance. And this unused fund, the total dollar amount is like, what, 26,000 or something like that? $19,000.
And was this part of ongoing funding from them? That's what I couldn't remember. I didn't go back and look at my personal notes from last year on that one.
This was
Or was it a one-time
This was a
allocation?
one-time ask to help them start work with Cardinal.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
that's
this
what I
was-
thought I remember. And there has, so far, because they're not fully operational, there's not been any additional requests,
That's
so.
really part of why it needs to be carried over. There was delays in
Uh-huh.
getting Cardinal up and running, so they just didn't spend the money. So it's not like they've done, it's taken longer to get Cardinal up and running. And so they haven't spent it. So in my 2025 reestimate for the behavioral health fund, I noted that and then just moved it into 2026.
Commissioner Anderson, does it make a difference for you that it is like they're one-time dollars from the behavioral health fund? I personally have a preference for wanting to keep it where we allocated it from last year. I think that's fiscally wise, but I just wonder if you have any further reservations, knowing that they're one-time dollars so they're not touching that approximately 1.6 million capacity for ongoing projects and services in the behavioral health fund, if that makes a difference.
It does make sense. I see where you're coming from and funding it out of the same line item that it was funded out of last year. I was looking at alignment for the actual work, being that when I take a look at like substance use, when I was reading the actual work that it aligned to, I thought that it aligned better to the actual opioid work and the fund itself. But I understand that being that it was funded out of the mental health line item last year, being that the commission itself voted and funded on it last year, I do understand that you would probably want to keep it in that same space since it is unused funds. In my mind, I was wanting to ensure that if it's substance use, that we're keeping it in that same frame.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner Anderson. And I think going forward, we need to look at how to use our special alcohol tax fund a little different. I think if we hadn't allocated it last year, I'd be totally with you on this, but I think we've got it there and it's one time. So.
And that's two different: special alcohol and then the municipalities fight addiction, which is the one we were talking about.
Yes, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate, yes.
And I also flagged that for that fit, but I'm not, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, just curious about kind of where that place is. But if it was there previously in behavioral health sales tax, that's fine by me.
Yeah, and we do fund a lot of substance use disorder work out of the behavioral health sales tax fund. It's clearly allocated to be able to do both. I just for clarity.
Yeah, I was going to note that too, and I think it's definitely a bigger conversation to unpack. I would like to sort of unpack the special alcohol fund further too, after this budget process concludes, like later in the year, to think about how we want to strategize that. And the municipalities fights addiction. The municipalities fights addiction are smaller annual installment or disbursements. I can't remember how many years we're anticipating them, but they do have a limit to them eventually, whereas the special alcohol tax works differently too. So I think there's more to unpack there, but some substance use disorder services in the behavioral health fund does make sense to me, and I think is reflected elsewhere too.
So are we comfortable leaving it where it is?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So then the permanent supportive housing HUD grant replacement. Just maybe commissioners can kind of say what they were thinking there.
So I flag this as I know there's capacity currently in the behavioral health sales tax to cover this on an ongoing basis. I also don't mind putting it in as a one-time funds, knowing that we'll have to revisit it next year. I would kind of like to leave that challenge open to HUD to that's a need and a role for federal government help. That's more of a philosophy than really expecting that something will change there. But that was just what I flagged for conversation.
I included the ongoing amount in my general fund. And part of the reason is since we've done the behavioral health sales tax, we really haven't included a lot of, we took an amount from the general fund. And then as our property tax has increased, we've still left it there. And I think it's important to make a commitment to beyond the behavioral sales tax and to make sure we're sort of balancing those two funds. When we talk later about some other things, it gives me room in the what I'm thinking of as general operating fund and the behavioral sales tax to leave some dollars there to do some things. But that was one reason I put it over in the general fund dollars. And just for the ongoing cost, that 321 number, I did include the rest out of the fund balance that we have in the mental health sales tax. So that's just, I'm just sort of playing with what account I want to take it out of. Mm-hmm.
They're interesting thoughts.
Rest of you put it out of behavioral health or?
Yeah, I included the full amount. Well, I did well, I think you did the math for us before we left on Friday to know what that adjusted amount was for 2025 plus 2026. So, I'm not opposed to funding out of the general fund if, Commissioner Willie, how does that land for you, like in terms of your thought process about one time or, leaving it open to HUD as, we still hope you'll fund us?
I said kind of my thought process was around one time, but knowing that the next year we'd be back talking about the same thing and needing to find an operating capacity for it, which could happen in either one. It does feel to me like behavioral health projects is the right place and there's capacity there. When we max out that operating capacity in behavioral health fund, that's when I think we'll have some kind of bigger discussions about where else, what else do we need to be doing and where should it come from?
Kind of wonder if this is one of those things that's going to come down to how you want, where you want the mill levy.
Yeah, because I also funded it out of the behavioral health simply because not an interest in overly raising the mill levy and being that one-time funds as well. And not knowing future years, what's really going to happen, and the fact that it does, I do really feel that it aligns very well with that fund. So, yeah.
And note that there's commissioner interest in funding it and then, but where it sits and we'll have to come back to. So
Okay.
I'm going to highlight it just so that we don't forget that we have to come back. If that makes sense. Okay. The public health, zero suicide. Now this one is just the delta between, Jake, can you read me what the total is here?
As we're picking lines out of this form, can we also note where to find them on the form where we did all of our homework all weekend?
Okay, yeah, Brooke
Really
will do
nice.
that piece. So this is the zero suicide coordinator. Give me the, it's not like 20, but we already have 20s. So we're looking at $15,500 because we already have 27 built in.
Okay, so that's on the non-appropriated balance just above behavioral health projects. At least that's where I have it.
I funded the 15.5 after our conversation on Friday, even though the worksheet I don't think was adjusted to reflect, it still had that 43 thousand and as the option before us. But what I heard on Friday was the option was 15.5.
Yes.
And so that's what I included.
I split it up to I left the 27.5 in the ongoing, in the column that would hit behavioral health fund operating, and then I put the 15.5 as a one-time. So I guess I made my own note on that.
And you just did the 15.5 as one time?
And I thought that was the 15.5 was a one-time to catch up and the 27.5 was the ongoing.
No, 43 is the ongoing in total. So from what I understand.
That's not what I thought we heard from Jonathan.
He's going to try to get. Bob's coming here around 10:30. I can ask him, but everyone's going to tell you they're going to try to apply for more grants. I guess I would just say, and that's fine. It's just when they don't get it, I'm going to bring it back to you. But my understanding is they do not have funding secured for the 15.5, or they wouldn't be asking for it. But if you want to fund it one time, we can.
I funded 43 ongoing.
And I'm okay with that. I'm the odd one out here.
Commissioner Dorsey, any thoughts? Just checking in.
Commissioner Dorsey has lost his voice, so we're going to do the best
Got
we
it.
can to interpret what he's saying. You might have to get really close to your microphone. Okay, so that one is included as ongoing funding to get to 43,000 in the behavioral health sales tax. And
Yes.
then with the candlestick and Colonel Mustard. Okay, so that's all of the top fives.
All right, the easy work's done.
Yep. So I'll move it down to, these items had 4 commissioners, and actually we just go in order because you're gonna have, almost all of them have notes. So the first one is the sync attorney request.
Okay, so I think the best way to do this is maybe if someone, and you said interest in partial funding, if you were someone who said partial funding, now's the time.
Well, I said partial funding. And that's just to make sure we flag the discussion. There was some talk about like how much capacity is in the district court budget already to kind of make some changes. And I think this has been kind of a philosophical question between some of our departments, and I know district court is not exactly a department, and the commission about when they have capacity in their own budget, why is it always a request for additional to us? So I just wanted to kind of flag that for discussion. I do think there's some equity considerations in terms of folks who are taking sync cases versus other kinds of panel cases, but sometimes when I wanted to talk about something, I put a weird number in there just to make Brooke, make us talk about it.
Yeah, I fully funded this because I thought it was it hasn't changed for so long and it just seemed like a real equity case. And I know how hard it is to find those panel attorneys for sync cases.
I also fully funded.
I'll out myself as not funding it, but not because I'm not supportive. In fact, I think I tried to leave it blank and I maybe just didn't give you a note on this one, Brooke. That's my bad. But so I'm very supportive of the request, but I didn't include it sort of for the philosophical reason of when I look at the district court budget, it seems that there's room there now. That could very well change by next year, and the budget process with staff going through and determining which line items need adjustment or where boosts might need to happen. But it feels like a district court decision to determine what the cost of those contracted amounts are with panel attorneys. So I have some mild reservations about us stepping into that space to direct that. I'm supportive of the request. And so I guess, if a blessing is what we're being asked for, I think that a blessing is fine. I don't see the need for an additional line in their budget to make it happen personally. But if I'm the odd one out here, so I'm just explaining my rationale and.
Not so odd. That's where I was coming from also, but if we got 3 to fund it, I'm fine to move forward with it.
Put it as fully funded at the amount requested. EMS, do you want to talk?
So maybe I'll start the EMS discussion. I appreciated the conversation we had on Friday, and I appreciate my colleagues' articulation of their thoughts. I am supportive of the blue when I did my budget work, but I actually want to go further than that. So I would like to see us do the blue option, and I'm also recommending that we put in the commissioner's budget 561,000 to cover the city's cost on that side. If we look at each of the options, there's a city cost as well. Past practices, I'm not sure the city will fund that. I'm not sure where they are on that. That also puts us at about close to the 1.7 million. And I heard my colleagues say they want to make sure we have enough mill levy for the System 6 expansion. And by doing that, we would put enough mill levy for not quite exactly, but pretty close mill levy built into our budget for expansion. That way, if we do 6 this year and 7 in the following year, we won't hit it too hard all of a sudden. Does that make sense, commissioners? That we're sort of pacing it over time. If the city steps up to fund their portion, which I certainly hope they do, it would give us some room within our mill levy to address some other things later we'll talk about in the budget that I think are sort of question marks for me that we just need more time to work with some partners on.
Can you tell me how you worked that through did you add, in addition to the proposed budget, add the 979,313, 312? Is that what you added to fund the blue option?
So the blue option on the worksheet says that it's 1.163, right?
It does.
Right. And then you'll see the city's balance of that would be 561.
So, but we already have written into commissioners, we have the gray option written into our current budget at 183,758. So to go to the blue, from the gray to the blue would be the difference. It would be the
Okay.
979,312.
Let me grab it. Maybe I'm wrong.
And share mine.
I'm often wrong.
So as Brooke's saying here, and it's noted kind of on this screen. Oops, calculator, no.
So you're
The-
pulling.
The delta to get from gray, which is in the proposed budget, to blue is $842,080.
Tell me that again, because that doesn't,
Brooke, do you want to, you might look at your math.
on the county impact blue option, it's 1.16. On the county option, gray option, it's 183,000. Different.
So I did that. I did blue minus gray, county impact option, that numbers you just said, Commissioner Willie, and I came up with 979, 312.
We can certainly
But-
check our math on that.
That's me too.
Yeah,
Just
we can
Just
certainly check our
to
math.
give ration, that's what I included. To get to the blue option, that's the math I did that,
That's a blue
um,
gray option. That's not the gray blue option. That's the
And
blue-
Commissioner, are you talking
they're
about
talking
splitting
about-
these in two different places when you're talking about the city portion?
Yeah, the city portion I would hold in the commissioner's budget so that we assess the mill levy for it, but we hold on actually allocating it until we understand what the city is going to do.
I think we'll need to give ourselves some room for that because there've been so many uncertainties. I personally wrote in the blue-gray option, but am open for the discussion of the blue option, which for those listening, the blue-gray option was adding a 40-hour week ambulance, and the blue option is adding a full Medic 6. I'm going to call it Medic 6, so nobody tries to sneak in under us and say, no, that's just a different ambulance that you guys did. We're doing something else from the city. So I have throughout this process been concerned about like where's that mill levy come from next year for that full operating capacity, and that some kind of a middle way has interested me. And this is not out of line to me at all. By this, I mean the blue option.
well, I included, as I mentioned, what I thought the math was for, to add a 24-hour Medic 6 option, so the blue option. But Commissioner Kelly, I like your idea, so I would be on board with that, I guess, given maybe there's some other things to figure out later about where our commissioner's contingency is based on other commissioners' priorities further down the list, but I'm intrigued.
I also included what I thought was the math for maintaining the blue option, which is maintaining EMS service levels.
And Brooke has clarified that. You want to
Okay.
the total, Brooke?
Yeah, Commissioners, sorry about that confusion. It looks like the delta between the two, what's built into the budget is $979,312.
And that's the difference between the gray option written in and the blue option, which is adding the full 24/7 Medic 6.
You've got it. Okay, yeah. Sorry about that.
Read it to me one more time.
And Commissioner Anderson, you were looking at the gray option, which is maintaining, or the blue option, which is adding?
A blue option, which states on here maintaining EMS service levels.
Be expanding.
Got it.
Is that for a full year?
Yeah.
So we could adjust the cost if needed by making it March, April, or May in terms of coming online.
Yeah, I'll know a lot. Yeah, I think with the timing of that, I mean, it's going to take them time to hire the right people, I assume. I don't know necessarily since people took layoff. I mean, people took the reductions in force. My assumption is they'd have to hire a new staff.
I was going to say there's a lead time in hiring and training, right?
Yeah. But yeah, and they bill us actuals. So, we only pay what they bill us for. I guess I'm a little confused about the extra 561,085 and your thoughts there, Commissioner?
Okay, so maybe it didn't make sense. So when I'm looking at the blue level service, the blue,
Yeah.
it shows to me that the cost of the expansion was 943. And then the city's impact was 561.85 and our county impact. So I now listening to everyone talk, here's what I want to do. Tell me how we do it. I want to make sure that the city, if we decide to add an ambulance, what I was reading in here was that there would be a cost to the city. I would like the city to cover that cost. But if they won't cover the cost, I want to be able to have the ability to have it in our mill levy to cover the cost. So it happens no matter what. What I think I'm understanding from our conversation right now is maybe it's that 1.163 number that is covering ours and the city's cost because they're not planning on paying anything for another ambulance, right?
Well, I think we looked at putting these scenarios together in total. So, and from what I understand from the city side, as long as they meet their overall reduction of 1.5 million, that's all that matters. So because we're picking up a significant amount of the shared expense in this scenario, they're hitting their 1.5, we go up 1.1, and an additional ambulance is added. So I don't know that they're not going to, as long as they hit their 1.5,
Yes,
they're gonna do it.
that's what I understood.
Yeah.
And if something changes, if they have other cuts that they want to backfill, they may not do it. And I
Oh.
just want to give us the mill levy power to be able to still make it happen.
Okay.
And it gets us to that
Well-
1.7 million that I'm.
And then what I would be nervous about is it's one thing for us to say we definitely want to add a station or add an ambulance. If they restore their cut, we have an obligation. So that is not accounted for in any of these scenarios. That's my concern, is if they decide to restore, not shut down engine 5 or ladder 5. Is that the one? Yeah, engine 5 upstaff. They decide not to shut down engine 5 and restore that on their end. You know, you can see right here on the blue impact, our impact is $425,130.
Yeah,
So you
that's
wanna-
sort of what I was
So you guys are
thinking.
kind of thinking you want to hedge you want to have a contingency to be able to definitely make sure an ambulance is added, knowing that we're planning for this Station 6 expansion, movement towards that, and that's what that ambulance is for. But if the city restores its cuts or does something with its cuts, part of this $425,000 obligation becomes the county's. You know, this is messing with the percentages like all get up. Okay. Just
Yeah,
wanna make sure we acknowledge that.
Yeah, no, I think I was just gonna acknowledge that answer. I mean, it does. And I'll acknowledge that earlier this year, I was stuck on that piece of it and trying to find a way through it, but we were just already at a wonky percentage shift and an acknowledgement that it's intended to be a one-time only, and we have to renegotiate everything about the governance agreement for all intents and purposes. Much of it might stay, but there are obviously some pieces of it that are going to get renegotiated. So I think that just is what it is. I do like the idea. At least personally, the way that I set up what I funded, which maybe is a lot less than other commissioners, there's plenty of room in our commissioner contingency line for that. And I would, to get towards not having to raise the mill levy in the future, or to minimize our chances of that by funding it this year where we've got the capacity, makes a lot of sense to me. So that's really where my head's at.
Commissioner Kelly, you were trying to get to 1.7 million.
Sort of, yeah. And I was just trying to make sure that we had mill levies set aside to serve the people of Douglas County. Whatever the city does, I wanted to make sure we had the dollars to respond to it. And that's not only in 2026, but also thinking ahead to 2027 and 28 as we see system expansion.
I think I took what you said differently and I just want to double check. So the difference between the written in gray and the blue option is the, let's say roughly 1 million. And I assumed you were putting that into two buckets. So say 600,000 is written into our budget for expansion, and that 500,000, which is the city's portion of it, I'm rounding 561, would be in contingency. That's not adding, not having a million in our regular budget and then putting in another 500,000 in contingency for that.
Yeah, I think that's what I did, but I'm understanding now that my math may not have been correct. And so if we have to move those around, I'm
Yeah.
fine with that. It's the goal is the goal.
That the total?
No,
That plus.
that plus
This plus that is,
uh-huh.
okay.
Yeah, and what we're looking at here is the total financial impact plus the city impact on the blue option is.
And I guess I'd say, I see what you're trying to say there, and that would accomplish it. I think I'm less worried that they won't fund the 561,085. I'm more worried that if they restore cuts of the 425, 130, we will have an obligation. So if they restore part of that shutdown of engine 5, we will have to pay our portion, and it's going to be a real wonky percentage at that point.
And Commissioner Kelly, your point in doing that is to kind of maintain closer to the percentages that we've had by kind of recommending that the city fund their portion of it. They're still getting their 1.5 million dollar reduction in the blue scenario. But you're hoping that instead that they would foot the bill for that 561.
Maybe. I think ideally, these conversations wouldn't be being had to how to fund LDCFN wouldn't be had in two budget hearings, right? Ideally, I would like us to honor the agreement that we agreed to and talk about how to move forward together. That's not happening. So I was compelled by some of the conversation that we had on Friday by my colleagues here about putting forward what's the service needed for the community of Douglas County. This is the service that's needed. I think I heard one of you say, let's hopefully that encourages. I want to make sure we have done a nice job, I believe, of sort of setting our budget in a place that supports expanded fire service. I want to make sure that's there. I'm not sure Sarah is having faith that the county will do 561,000. I don't necessarily have that faith, to be honest, and it gets it closer to our mill levy.
I guess I would rather just say, as commissioners, we're holding $1.5 million back for station expansion, operating expenses, and or cut restoration, and or the city's portion of ambulances. I'd almost rather, if that's what you're trying to aim towards, I think I understand what you're trying to do there.
So put all of it in the contingency until the city gets through its budget cycle. Is that another way to look at it?
We could certainly do that. I mean, yeah.
Can we discuss this again on Wednesday after the Tuesday city commission meeting?
Yeah, obviously, nothing's final till the end.
Good idea.
Are you comfortable? We will program in this $1.7 million total, 1.5 actually, total, and we'll probably just leave it all on commissioner for now. And we'll put that on your consensus worksheet and come back. I'm going to mark it though, just in blue, so we know. All right.
We heard a lot of people talking about the blue option. Do we have 5 consensus or do we just have a majority and we're moving forward?
Yes.
Yeah, because you had one commissioner that didn't. All right, so you're comfortable with the blue option, Commissioner Dorsey?
I put it in at 850
Okay,
because I couldn't remember the right number.
okay, all right. So we'll move forward with the blue option and hold the money in contingency. Okay.
Just want to say this is the week I always wish I could remember my math teachers' names so that I could send them a link and tell them, look how good I am at math now.
I had Mr. Rohrabach in the tie. Thank him constantly for my math. All right. Next one is network administrators, and we had various levels of funding and various levels of.
And is this for the IT department
Oh, yeah.
specifically, or is this sheriff? Because IT asked for, I thought, one administrator and one PC specialist.
Thank you, commissioners. If this is in the 4 section, this is for the sheriff operations section on your budget worksheet.
No, sheriff's office on that.
The original amount requested was 164,255.
So the 164,255 was for the 2 positions.
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct.
I penciled in funding one of those.
I also penciled in one.
I didn't fund this. I could be convinced to one. Yeah. I sort of wanted to hear commissioners' thoughts on all of the IT positions, so I just sort of didn't fund any of the supplemental requests that weren't included and wanted to hear where we landed on that.
I was pretty sensitive to the needs of opening new buildings, and then ongoing maintaining new buildings for the IT part of things. I think we've heard requests for a long time from both the sheriff's office and IT about the needs and the growing needs there. I don't really like adding positions, so I wrestled with this quite a bit, but I did recommend adding one for IT and one for the sheriff's office IT. It's just a starting point.
I did add the IT positions, hearing from the sheriff's office, but also hearing from Starla and team, hearing from our EMS team, just the interconnectedness of all the various teams, but also hearing how separate they are. The fact that they don't necessarily operate under one umbrella or one leader, and the fact that they need to operate under different leaders and under different departments requires the fact that they have to have their own staff, their own departments, their own funding to do this work. And so they need these individuals to really stand up these services. And the fact that we are constantly changing. Systems are changing so rapidly. And our county is changing, and we have the World Cup coming. We have the new jail coming on board. Thank you, public safety. I was just thinking that. I was like, I'm using the wrong term, so I appreciate that. They need resources and support to ensure that they're standing it up appropriately and the right systems are in place. And so I did fund it completely because I want to make sure that they have the support and the resources that they need, and that they don't have to come back and ask us, and they feel supported in this space. And so I did fund them. I did fund them completely.
So you funded 2 positions for sheriffs and 2 positions for IT?
I funded all of them completely.
Okay.
For all IT.
So did I.
I funded one for the sheriff's office, and I did not fund the others. My thinking behind it was that we have seen this request from the sheriff's office many years over, and it seems clear enough to me that there's some growing need, and I think that even though the requests predate the new building, that the new public safety building and the move of sheriff's office, emergency communications dispatch center, and emergency management over there, specifically our dispatch center and sheriff's operations, that one additional position seems valid and warranted for now. I think that to Commissioner Kelly's point, that there is sort of a larger conversation for us to unpack and better understand as commissioners about the whole picture of IT operations countywide. I think we've learned a lot of nuances about it this budget hearing. But for me, it was we have added positions to IT in recent years as well, and so part of my equations and looking at all of those together was that I don't have the sheet in front of me, so I can't remember how it's titled in our book, but a list of all of the departments, like a summary that shows sort of the percentage that those budgets have increased year over year, or in a change to the budget this year. And it's significantly higher for IT because we have added some positions in recent years. And have said no to the sheriff's office. I think that the uniqueness of their operations and the sort of specialized pieces of it, and the fact that they're now going to be in a new building, that one position is warranted for now. I didn't feel compelled that two seemed completely necessary. And then I personally didn't fund the countywide IT department at this time.
Yeah, I hear commissioners on this, and like I said, I could be persuaded to go to one here. I do take very seriously administration's recommendation on our budget, and that's one thing I look very closely at. These were not included, and I think the other thing that I want us to just sort of wrestle with is I've heard the argument on one side they need to operate within their budget, and then they really need the position. So, and I don't know that there's a policy set answer to that. That's part of why we have these discussions and why this is our job. But I do think I was sort of weighing, we did do a significant pay increase for the sheriff's department recently. If that was the need that they had, could they make some adjustments there? Their budget has increased significantly over the last few years, but I also understand that that with the new building, there's definitely IT needs there.
Definitely hearing consensus for one position,
That's what I'm hearing.
and then, but not necessarily two, or is there consensus for the sheriff? I'm just thinking for this 164, 255.
I'm hearing consensus 3 for 1 and 2 for 2. Maybe we want to revisit this since there seems to be some overlap here. Maybe we want to look at the other IT positions as well.
Can put in one for now for the sheriff, and then come back to this and decide if there's consensus for two.
Commissioner Kelly, when you were saying you were interested possibly in going to one, though you'd funded 0, you're talking about just the sheriff's office. You're not having that kind of dual discussion that I was kind of leaning into.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Commissioner Willie, is like what we heard is they do very different things, right? And so I'm a little nervous about sort of weaving these together. To Commissioner Reed's point, I think we need to continue to have discussions, maybe after our budget is concluded, like what does our IT department look like as it undergoes significant change with the buildings, and we're asking for more dashboards and there's more we heard Starlake sort of give us the whole rundown of the things. In some ways, I just need more information on that.
Yeah, I think I want to acknowledge that some of that information and the info graphics that Starla was able to present was helpful. And I feel like I'm getting a clearer picture, but it's still not clear enough for me. And I also take staff's recommendations pretty seriously about that.
We can put one in for now, and I've marked it as blue, so we can decide if later you want to come back and get to two.
Yeah, I think that keeps us moving ahead, commissioners. Yep.
Okay, the next one is the one-time funding for the anti-poverty community health plan for the Community Child Care Scholarship Fund.
I'd be interested to hear commissioners' idea on partial funding here. This one and the other one that were requested, I'm thinking about the pre-apprenticeship program. I wanted to hear more development of, I heard we asked businesses, we went to the chamber, and I wanted to hear, like, I'd be really excited if we came with sort of a match idea that, the chamber or chamber part, not the chamber, but business entities had said, like, we're supportive of this. I just felt like this needed a little more time before I was ready to fund it fully.
I put it in as a little less than 100,000. I put it in as 80. That was a fairly random kind of placeholder. But I also mentioned to use as a challenge grant. Like I don't want to be, on a peninsula with this or on an island, like putting ourselves out in front of the funding. I think the conversation was always about how much the business community needs this. And the Community Children's Center was kind of working on the model that businesses were going to step up to support. I don't want to just fill that gap until they've done that. So I'm really only interested in it as a challenge grant.
Yeah, Sarah, I see you're having Jill come up. I'm also interested, I'm open to sort of any amount of funding. I did think about partial funding for this request in particular, more so than the pre-apprenticeship one. So I was interested in commissioners' ideas about numbers, but for me, what I wish I would have asked last week was a little bit more information on what a community challenge grant sort of model would look like, and to get in a nutshell what that could look like, just because at least in my years of budgeting so far, we haven't quite done something that's structured like that. So curious to understand more.
Yeah, I think for both of these requests, and I apologize if the way that the proposals were written did not clearly articulate it, but I envisioned them being, the Anti-Poverty Community Health Plan envisioned them being challenge grants because we have been challenged in getting partners to the table in a meaningful way to provide that additional funding. And I don't think it's because a lack of caring or that it's possible. It's just we haven't had a compelling opportunity to see if something like a match would work. I've had one experience in Sarah and I's prior budget years in Johnson County with one of the outside agencies, one of the few outside agencies that we funded. I think it was ETC Institute, Sarah, or the Angel. It was actually an angel investor organization that the county provided a small amount of money, and they wanted to raise a significant amount for that angel fund. And we only indicated that the county indicated that they would match it in increments based on what they were able to raise. And I think it took almost till the end of the year that organization was able to raise the necessary match, but they got there. It may not work on these two projects, but I think a match scenario is absolutely how we envisioned it. And I would be happy to put together with the anti-poverty work groups the scenarios of how that could and would work. And we can bring it back to you all later this summer or early fall.
Yeah, I think we would need more detail on that because you only just say it on one line in the request, so we don't really know what that would be structured like.
Sure.
And would that be, do you envision that being managed through your office through the county, or would that be something that we would kind of oversee? Like, and I know we don't actively partner with the Children's Community Center, but that's kind of the one that I have in my head, or some other organization that could manage all the ins and outs of that, as long as it met with our approval.
Correct. The Positive Bright Start was the organization that we'd indicated because they have experience administering those large pools of money, ARPA funding, or excuse me, I think it was CARES Act funding that they administered. And then Peasley would be our hope that, they've got a significant fundraising campaign happening as well, that this would be a separate restricted amount of funding that we could manage.
Talk to that when we get to that one. We're not.
Sure. Sorry.
Yeah. We have a consensus on a number.
I was less set on the number that I penciled in as the larger discussion, and who manages the work, like how much of our staff time have we just added to with this, or can it go to another entity, Positive Bright Start?
It would go to Positive Bright Start for this. And in terms of the management of the funds and reporting out what comes in month to month and sharing that out with our work group. So we have possibly, but we could do that a couple different ways. I also know that, I haven't had conversations with them yet, but the Community Foundation has always been a strong partner in the community health plan and in particular this one. So we could also have a conversation with them about, is this an opportunity for them to play a role?
I guess what I just heard Jill say is what my trepidation about funding, like if we do it with Positive Bright Start, is there an administration cost that we have to take with Positive Bright? If we hope, we think Douglas County Community Foundation has been helpful. I just wanted more time to bake and to sort of get something more solid. If we feel like as a commission, this is a good thing and we want to put some dollars to it to get it going, I could be persuaded of that, but I just want more time for it.
Usually when we have a request for, something that's being expected to be managed by an outside agency, the request is coming from that agency. So both of these that you've alluded to, the Peasley one, also feel a little odd in that I don't have a clear sense of what's our role and what's the partner's role.
I'm looking across the table to see if Commissioner Anderson or Commissioner Dorsey have anything they want to add. So there's, four folks included it in some way, so.
If I can talk, I'll say a few things. I think we need some kind of funding in that area because childcare is through the roof. And if you're trying to develop economically, you need a place to work, a place to live, and a place to drop your kids off. So I'm supportive of the concept. I'm not hung up on the specific dollar amount, but I think we do need some assistance in this area.
Supportive of the concept, but I'm thinking through some of the questions that you both asked and the process, I guess. If we don't come to a determination here today, what does the process look like if we don't fund it and a community partner were to come before us outside of this process?
So just an opportunity, I don't want to overuse it, but we could put it in the commissioner's contingency budget and say, we need, ask Jill and staff or Sarah to ask staff to go find a partner for this so we get a clear expectation of what our costs are, how we would determine who would receive the funds, is it a 50% match? Is it a 25, 70? What is that match? Who are is there capacity within the child care system? Because, those are questions that I have. What's the rate that we're paying within the child care system? Having met with many of the child care providers, I'm concerned we need to get those wages up. And so are we funding a system that is actually depressing wages for childcare? Those are some of the things that I want to sort of explore and unpack with this, but we could put it in that contingency budget.
The existing capacity, I think, is over 2,000 places short at the moment.
Right. That's my point, Commissioner Dorsey, is why we might be funding spots. We may not have spots within the system. We may be attacking this problem by just saying, we're trying to help pay for it. And maybe it's more deeper seated than that.
I think just given the unknowns with it, I think there's a lot of interest in the idea of it. Because I think there's a lot of interest in childcare as an economic development tool. But I would think contingency budget would be the best we could do with that. And if it can't get flushed out in time, then we wouldn't be spending that money. But I think that would put the challenge back to our staff and partners to say, what would that look like, and give us something that we would feel would be adequate.
Agreed, in favor of contingency budget.
100K in the funding contingency line in the commissioner's budget one time for further development of the scholarship fund.
Presuming that we don't already have room in the contingency budget for it.
I'll just earmark, I'm just going to earmark 100K for that purpose right now. Okay, thank you. The next one, we had 4 commissioners that were interested in the Sester Centennial one time. So I don't know if you want to, since you've got 4, if you want to talk about it or if you feel comfortable with that dollar amount. I do want to talk about the DECA special alcohol tax item when we get there. But if
I felt like we have significant fund balance. This is a one-time request. This isn't a huge request. And I actually feel like it could generate some positive economic development to the community. So I was supportive.
And I think it supports that partnership that's been growing amongst our heritage partners. I'm excited about that. I thought it was an easy yes for me.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Then, so we're going to include that one time. The DECA special alcohol, looks like we have 4 commissioners for funding the 125,000. So that's 5 years of the allocation. I think we can do that. Commissioners, I would like to come back this fall and talk specifically. Right now, this is just $25,000 of sort of what I would call good people money. It just goes to them to, support their, as they say, their uninsured population. But I'd like us to talk about, do we want to structure that a little more fully? So if commissioners are okay with that, we'll include it in our notes on how to do opioid. But if commissioners want to go ahead and fund this, we can.
Yeah, I'll just share that I did not include this because because it's not tied to anything specific, and that principle of sort of retroactive funding, even though it is a special fund and it's sort of unique dollars, it just didn't sit quite right with me. And I think that there is a larger discussion to be had about both the special alcohol tax fund and the municipalities fights addiction, what the distinction between those funds are and how we want to strategize for them moving forward. So to take 125K out of that fund, attached to sort of no specific barrier reduction or other programming, yeah, didn't sit with me personally. Looks like I'm the only one that didn't include it, so just sharing my rationale.
Well, I did include it, but had many reservations that were echoed by Commissioner Reed also. And I guess what tipped it is I want to know more, but I also want to make sure that this special alcohol and the municipalities fight addiction, that the money is going out into the community to do the things that fund was intended to do. So but that is not out of line whatsoever to, I've been wanting to know more about what it is and what we'd be getting for it.
Agreed. So Commissioner Reed, I absolutely understand where you're coming from. And I also want to know what we could be getting out of those dollars and can be persuaded to not fund out of that particular bucket. So open to having more conversations. If there are other commissioners that would not want to fund special alcohol tax.
Just going back through my spreadsheet because I was confused about something.
Is there an expectation that this should go to one entity over another?
So that's, yeah. So that's
Okay,
part
that's
of
what
it.
I wanna,
So
I guess I
cons-
thought there was an
In
expectation.
the past,
Okay,
DECA was the only person who applied. They actually didn't even apply. We just sent them $25,000 out of this fund every year. And then they quit asking, so we quit sending it. And that happened in 2022, hence why and then it took them 4 or 5 years to figure out they weren't getting it, in my view. And then they asked for it. So that was what I'd like to do, is get to a point where we have a more conscious, thoughtful, deliberate understanding of what we're going to do with this funds. But I understand that this is a time of transition. There is sufficient balance there. I didn't tell them that, necessarily like you need to give us a different proposal. We just said this year as we opened up budget requests that people could ask for requests from special alcohol and municipalities fights addiction within that for eligible type expenses. So that's where you saw the few little ones from Mirror and AHH. And then DECA's like asked for the 125. So I think I mean, you guys are all in the right space here. My goal is this fall is that even if we did this for this year, whatever we do for this year, we have a better game plan for 2027. That's what I want us to do is this fall is have a better game plan for 2027 as to what kinds of projects are we looking for.
And other organizations could be eligible to also ask for those
Yeah,
dollars?
Absolutely. Like Mirror's gonna mirror, anybody who's willing, who can do the work in this space
Mhm.
would be eligible to apply. But I want to run that application process through the budget process. I don't want another separate, they would ask, hey, we think this would be a great project for X, for the special alcohol fund. And the balance there is less if you make this allocation and with the others, it's, there's really only $25,000 to $30,000 a year coming into this fund. So it's a pretty small fund.
So I'm open to keeping the dollars in the fund and having more opportunities next year for organizations to have a better plan moving forward and for other organizations to put forth impact-oriented requests to really do something with these dollars in budget cycle 26, 27.
Yes, this commissioners, this is actually, as I'm now listening to you all, this is actually going back in time, and I have some very specific thoughts about requests back in time. And this is for 5 years, you said, Sarah? What if I'm going to make a proposal to fund it at 25,000 for this year, not the 125,000, which goes back years? That gives us a little more money, to your point, Commissioner Anderson, about, I don't know.
Eric, if we're just too close to two mics, too close to each other.
That would give us more money down the road to maybe have a little better process that Sarah talks about. And I think would not, to Commissioner Reed's point, not fund just here's $125,000 because we didn't give you that money in the past.
So I grappled with that and considered doing a partial funding. But I reread the request and the request is for retroactive money instead of asking for dollars for 2026. Like it would be spent in 2026, but the ask is still in the spirit of asking for previous years of, from their perspective, missed money. And that's just where I personally got stuck. So it's not that I don't believe that DECA does good work and that the dollars can't be used. I just do think there's a larger conversation about special alcohol that we need to have that we haven't had in these chambers yet. And I didn't feel like any part of their request was for current dollars, in contrast to the other requests we got for special alcohol funds, which were for the coming budget year. So based on that praxis, it was no funding for me. Again, I'm the odd one out on this line, it seems, but so I'm, those are just my thoughts about it.
I hadn't fully processed it in terms of yes, this is kind of like back pay. And we've had other times where we have said no to that. And so that makes me uncomfortable to fully fund this, just again, in that context. I'm not offended by putting the 25,000. I think DECA will do good things with it, but I do wish that I had asked more questions prior to this. And I think moving forward, we'll need to.
Sarah, is there anything that we have to make a decision on the alcohol tax money with our budget process, as long as we're not moving it to mill levy?
No, you don't have to do it.
I mean, we could say to DECA, no to 125,000. They could come back later. I know you don't want it outside of the budget process, but considering so we could understand Commissioner Reed's request about what they plan to do with this money.
Yeah, you certainly could do that. I mean, I guess I would want to make sure we have clarity that the other requests are funded and would move forward. So like the mirror request, the AH, if you're comfortable with those being approved and moving forward, and then ask DECA to come back this fall while we have this conversation about opioid special alcohol funding, we could certainly do that. I think the way we budget this fund, we could make those expenses later if you want. Does that sound like a plan?
So we're talking about being open to funding requests within this fund or these two funds outside of budget? Is that what I'm
Just
hearing?
this one
Oof.
time,
Oof.
just this one time, if you please. Just like, I just don't want to be running grant work cycles all year round. But if we wanted to have them come back this fall, because we don't have a lot of clarity on what we want to do with this fund, I can understand that. I just don't want us to get into a regular cycle of it. I'd like us to get some clarity and move forward. Does that make sense?
It does make sense to me, sir. And I guess like commissioners, I wonder if I would, I feel that I've really overcomplicated this one, because sometimes I get stuck on the principle of things. I am open to, and I think it's, a valid enough option to consider partial funding for it rather than another process that sort of could turn into a slippery slope. I mean, we've already acknowledged that there's a larger conversation to have about special alcohol and how we strategize that funding for the future budget process. But I think, I think I'm comfortable with a, good faith, like partial granting of the request, knowing that they're a good partner and do good work, and that maybe there's just some things lost in communication about how we were accepting and processing requests related to that. So I just want to, Commissioner Kelly mentioned a partial funding option. If other commissioners are interested in that, I think that that's viable.
Yeah, I think we have to own our part of the mess that we haven't been real clear about how to use this fund. And so I would offer I would say 25,000 for 2026 and stop there. That's my recommendation at this time.
Yeah, I'm there.
Agreed.
Okay.
Next one is the Heartland RADAC.
I did not fund this one.
Commissioner Anderson, I'd be interested in your thoughts. The only thing I'll preface with is we've had years of conversation with Heartland RADAC about how to recognize that the cost of the service they provide increases every year. We would like, of course, to keep a budget there. That was some of the same conversations we had with Douglas County Extension and things like that. So I think this is, for me, in past years, I would have said no. I feel like we've had this conversation so many times that I felt like we needed to do something.
In looking at their budget, and then looking at the various funding levels that they do receive from Douglas County, I saw that they receive a fair amount of money from the county. And so I did feel that their funding level is fairly significant. And then also in looking at the various partners that they also have, it does appear that they have a wide range of partners at the table. And so I did wonder if there's opportunities for them to take a look at other partners that could possibly support this particular request. When I took a look at the request from Douglas County Extension and weighed that against the request from RADAC, I viewed that as we have a Kansas statute in regards to some of these requests. And so we don't have a statute in relation to RADAC. And so that's how that was kind of the litmus test that I used to guide my particular decision.
Differing because I have a voice. It's not fair. I did put it down for partial funding just to make sure kind of we had this discussion. I would say of all the partners that we interact with, um, I don't hear anything from Heartland Radar throughout the year. Like, and that seemed kind of odd to me. I guess that's what stood out. That I have a pretty good idea of the scope of work for most of these partners and interact with them throughout the course of the year, and so have a better way to weigh the requests. And this one, that was part of why I flagged it. I know they've asked for a long time for cost of business increase kinds of things, but it's worrisome to me for both this and other partners that ask, like, where do we stop? Where does it stop? How do we choose which partners that we're helping with cost of business increases and which ones we're saying, hey, we're pretty useful funding because we don't always tie it to specific programs you can use for overhead kinds of things. But it just I wasn't real confident in it, but I'm open to persuasion if folks want to talk about it.
I, I fully funded this mainly because I've sat in on budget hearings the last 3 years, and it's come up every year, and it hasn't gotten any support. I'm not hung up on the specific dollar amount. In fact, I may have rounded it off to 75. I don't remember, but I think they're deserving of some increase.
I think last year they asked for about double this amount.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me, what really changed is the amount was significantly different this year than the previous years we've discussed it. So I was really grappling with the request in previous years, but uncomfortable with the number and uncomfortable with not understanding how we arrived at this number. And so this year, it felt like the request was more reasonable, and we had a bunch more data and information that, for me, helped me understand where the number was coming from, and that it was a specific tie to Douglas County. Because, to your point, Commissioner Anderson, that has been sort of the evolving conversation with RADAC over the years, is they are a regional organization. They do get funding from other entities, and they, are certain counties have certain services available and other counties don't. And so those levels are always going to vary. But what I felt pleased with this year was that there was some real clear data in their budget report about the amount of Douglas County residents served. Also, that the conversation we had and the data we were presented with, the fact that they do tap into other funding options for folks that they're serving in Douglas County whenever applicable, right? And so the Douglas County dollars are sort of the last dollars applied to those folks that they're serving when they can't find any other allocation. And then the other piece of it for me that was compelling and has always been compelling about, I think, Heartland Radar and the work that they do is sometimes no news is really good news, Commissioner Willie. Like, we don't hear from them a lot. I think we hear, honestly, probably more from Bob in the greater context of our continuum of care about some of the services they provide, but don't hear necessarily directly from them. They've been a really solid partner over the years with good continuity of services. They're a leader in the MyRC space, and really leading in that space of data collection and data analysis, and the ability to really leverage that in meaningful ways for our county. So I think they're a really strong partner, and the positions what we fund RADAC with is exclusively tied to positions and services that those positions are provided. And so that's it's simpler, cleaner math, even though it is still a little bit complicated by the fact that it's regional and there's multiple revenue sources, right? But they do provide significantly more services in Douglas County than they do other counties, in part because our county has made an investment in a larger continuum of care. And so anyway, those are all the reasons that I thought were compelling to finally be able to fund this, because I felt like we got the rationale that we've been sort of drudging through the past few years trying to understand this. And our care workforce is so significant. And as we continue to invest in like a stronger continuum of care in this community, like thinking about how we're investing in the positions that we are funding and accounting for those the inflationary costs there does seem important to me, because the care workforce is something that's always been undervalued otherwise. And so I think that's a part of the conversation that matters for me here. And it's a little bit different than some of the other historical sort of inflationary or cost of business, cost of living adjustments that we've received. We don't have many of them this year, but in previous years we've had several of them. So it's been this larger topic in the chambers. So that was long-winded, but for whatever it's worth to you, Commissioner Anderson.
Well, I find that persuasive, so I could go with this funding.
I think so. The next one is the permanent supporting housing grant replacement, and we sort of started to talk about that. Am I
Yeah,
wrong?
I think this was just, maybe there was some confusion because this is just the 2025 amount.
Yeah, this
So-
was the one-time funding,
Yeah,
right?
I don't know if commissioners want to talk through it. I think you agreed that we're going to come back to it, but we're including it funded. So we can do the same for this one. Maybe just we had a commissioner who wasn't.
Can you give me those two numbers again, the one time and the ongoing?
Yeah.
The one time is the 171, 512. And then the ongoing is
321,032.
Thank you.
next item is the tenants to homeowners position. And I had a conversation with Commissioner Kelly about this on Friday. I think what we probably need to do a better job as staff, really, to me, this is a supportive housing case coordinator. It's not a care coordinator like Heartland Radak. So I think we need to start kind of, and I'm looking at Jill here, like to make sure I'm saying this right, but this is to support people in housing. And it's it's not case management. It is just a supportive housing coordinator.
Shannon and I went to a walkthrough of some of those small houses, and part of the problem, some of those people moving in don't know how to live in a house.
Which is what they need help with
Yeah.
in the situation. But I don't want to make it, they're not mental health case managers. They're not necessarily adjusting meds or anything or getting, it's how to live in housing, you know. So we had 4 commissioners that were interested in talking about this one at different levels.
I had this fully funded and then not, and then fully funded. And then I finally just put in a place number that would make Brooke flag it for us for discussion. And mostly it was about, we heard this conversation about how it's best practice to have the landlord be the landlord and the care organization be the care organization, and to keep those somewhat separate. And that was my concern here, is like, this is an intentionally crossing over and the landlord providing them with these care things. And I think the request was because they weren't getting what they needed from the care organizations in our community. And I wasn't sure, if by funding this and having a position to tenants to homeowners, it may solve an immediate problem, but it maybe isn't the right fix in the system. And that's what I wanted to talk about. If there's a better place for that role other than this funding. I certainly hear the need and want to address the need, and wasn't sure if this was the right spot or not.
I would add, there absolutely is, we are trying to implement as a best practice, that separation between the case manager that's working directly with the client on their plan and the landlord. When it comes to organizations like Tenants to Homeowners, which is they are a supportive housing landlord, supportive housing provider, because of the nature of a majority of the housing units that they manage are their supportive housing. It takes, it's a supportive landlord management role. And what we found with the position that's being requested, that will complement an existing position, is that role is key to maintaining, to having really just the separation and the open communication between the tenant, the client, the case, and their case managers, but also, in terms of the representing tenants to homeowners, making sure that the client is, that maintenance orders are being made and that that's being communicated with the rest of the team, and that, that they're protecting the interests of tenants to homeowners while also thinking about the well-being of other folks that are in some of those units, and clearly communicating that with the client and their case team. So it's a real unique position, but it still does adhere to that distinct separation. Tenants to Homeowners is just a unique organization in our community, and we're still trying to maintain that balance.
Let's see, 4 commissioners included this. I don't know if everybody was full funding or sounds like Commissioner Willie, you were partial funding. So I'll just put on the record my dissenting opinion, and that I have concerns about this position and this role at Tenants to Homeowners. It is a role that we already fund, and I have more questions about that, but not in a way that I want to, defund or disrupt what we are funding with them. But they're a newer partner. The most information that we have about Tenants to Homeowners is mostly about, the units that have come online, the built sites, things like that. I believe that this commission doesn't have much information about the care coordination service side of things. And so as a service provider, I just have concerns about how it is, how well it is working. And I also heard things during our hearing that concerned me and didn't feel totally true or fully fair, about other providers in the community not being available or not existing to provide. Some of the examples that we were given were examples where I don't believe that the Tenants to Homeowners care coordinator is responding to 3 a.m. needs either. So I just, there's more there for me to unpack. And I'm just putting it on the record because I was a little bit tough with my questions last week. And so I'm giving some further color and context to that I'm personally not supportive of funding any more positions with Tenants to Homeowners. I think they're a great builder and manager of properties in a way that is really sustainable and affordable for our community. I'm less sure about the services side of things, but that's just a personal opinion.
And I was looking at it as, I think I really value that they're stepping into this really tricky space to house people that are harder to house. And I want to support that. But I wonder if that support isn't, more broadly available across the community by having a 24/7 like mobile response team, which we currently don't have. And so like looking at, 100,000, is it here that's the most appropriate part? Is that the best lever? Specifically for the tenants to homeowners question, needs, but also as we're getting into other kind of landlord relationships, does that behave more broadly? So that's why I had it funded, I had it unfunded. I went back. And so rather than just, partially funded through an organization, I really want to talk about what's the right place in the system.
Commissioner Willie, I was similar to you in that I funded it and then I didn't fund it and I funded it and I didn't fund it because I share a lot of the same concerns Commissioner Reed has about, it isn't best practice to have the landlord also be doing the care coordination. But I also understand the frustration and seeing some of our community partners really in a little bit of meltdown status, makes, I gave one of those partners an opportunity to defend that. So what I don't want to do is lose the housing for those people because they're not getting the care coordination that they need. I would really love for our staff to sort of figure out which partner should be doing that kind of care coordination, whether that's mobile integrated health response, whatever that thing is. But I can feel even the family promise request, which we'll talk about here in a minute, why Family Promise is doing it for Cardinal. Family Promise also has its own properties that, like, who is doing that care coordination? And if that's best practice, how can we get a partner who says, I'm not going to own any apartments, I'm not going to, and just be doing this care coordination to sort of serve in that role?
And that was much of what I wrestled with. And also that we can't just tell a partner, hey, you need to be providing this service because this is what our community needs, if that isn't part of, their understanding of their mission or their current expansion or their current capacity. So I went round and round between this one and the conversation with Family Promise. I had kind of in the same bucket of where should that work be coming from? I didn't land on anything that I feel pretty confident in either. So maybe we'll just hear from other commissioners.
And that's basically what I wrestled with, is like, who or what is that entity, right? That is really providing that core service. And that's something that I couldn't find across the entire care continuum. And so I think that's what I hear you saying, is that there really isn't one entity that's out there delivering that service. And so those are further conversations that need to be had. And I did the same thing Friday through Sunday, removing, putting back, removing, putting back. And so at this point, I would be in favor of stepping back and really understanding what that role should look like and how we can really better support by ensuring that we do have the right entity serving in this particular space. So if that does mean that we put the dollars in a contingency fund, I would be in support of that, if that's something that would be appropriate in this space.
Commissioners, I hate brainstorming on the spot here, but we could make it a one-time funding request to say that we recognize this is a problem. We need to work towards best practice. We need to work towards figuring that out. It wouldn't go on the mill levy. We have some fund balance for it. I'm just trying to think of a way to, my worry about using contingency too much is it's just kicking the can down the road. And so I'm sure for a partner, that's like, great. When are we going to get on their agenda? When are we going to tell them what we need? So in some ways we could fund it for now and share a lot of these thoughts, have staff continue to work with that partner to figure out what they need. And then also for us to come up with some, I anticipate, when I included in my budget, I anticipated that the service agreement would cover some of the measurables that I didn't quite get in the application.
There's some measurables in the outcomes report that TTH provides month to month that I think speak to that I'm happy to resurface. But I would just offer that I think I appreciate where this conversation is going. And it's hard for me, as much as I want to be an advocate for this role in this position, and the conversations that Bob and I and others have been having around the challenges that they've been facing and what kind of led to this request being made. I do think in a lot of ways it is a response to just the lack of some system-wide supports not working the level they can. And the conversation we've had in this space before, a lot of the folks that we're talking about that tends to homeowners has had some of the biggest challenges with, in an ideal world, they've been supported by a high-functioning assertive care team, the ACT team, through the Community Mental Health Center. And that's the opportunity, I think. It's mobile response that you all have brought up. The one thing I'll say on Family Promise, I don't want to jump ahead, but is that those are Family Promise clients that they're going to be referring those clients for those units. So it's really just they would be providing those supportive services one way or the other. It just, they're not spread so thin, and it gives the landlord a little more comfort that they're getting the level of support that they need. Family Promise as an organization, they're spread pretty thin from a case management perspective, from my perspective. So this is just giving the landlord the assurance that those families have the appropriate level of supports that they need to maintain that housing and protect the interests of the landlord.
So oh, go ahead.
So I also toyed with the idea of like, what is a one-time while we kind of reevaluate the system for that? And I'm worried about being able to hire a position under one-time funds. And I figured they'd just come back and ask again. So that I went down that road a little bit and didn't land on it. The mobile response team and the ACT team, like some of these are pieces that we've invested in and been really supportive and curious about, that are programs of Bert Nash. And I think those are programs that are not fulfilling this full need. And I think that was be part of that other discussion about and with our partner, Bert Nash. Like we have partners that will step up and do the housing piece. We need you to be filling in. We don't really get the chance to tell organizations how and what to do their jobs, but like that's why this is a difficult one for me, is that I want to see that that need gets met, and I'm not sure what our power is to do that.
So I'm hearing some contingency funding. I'm hearing not funding. I'm hearing one-time funding.
I think one thing to do would be to fund it and recognize that because our system isn't working correctly, this is why it's needed. And to not step back from the system's work, but that's one possible way forward.
Maybe put a pin in this one and come back to it. Can I recommend, commissioners, we take a short break here? And I've heard that 5 minutes isn't long enough. So how about we come back at 10:45? 9 minutes, okay? Okay. And we'll pick up where we left off. All right, we're back from our break. We were looking at tenants to homeowners, and we decided just to hold on that one for now. Family Promise is the next one. We've had 4 that funded it. Yeah.
I got a question. Is this a different type of person than the previous one?
No.
I mean, I can't speak for either organization, but in my professional experience, they are different requests. And quite frankly, in part, that's why I mean, the tenants to homeowners request is for significantly more for what I would consider to be less intensive work. So case management services at Family Promise is, it is really what we were talking about, being the service provider for somebody in other supportive housing units. And it's, everybody's case management plan is going to look different depending on what their needs and budget goals are, whether it's weekly meetings, a couple times a week if there's, family in crisis, or maybe just once a month to sort of check in about billing, things, maintenance, stuff in the house, et cetera. But it's much more goal oriented and working regularly with the family. I would interpret the care coordination at tenants to homeowners as more of a person who is frequently acting as a liaison between the tenant and any care providers that they may be working with elsewhere in the community, whether that's Willow, potentially Family Promise, Bert Nash. There's all types of different services that someone might be engaged in. And in my opinion or experience, the care coordinator is acting as much more of a conduit for sharing and receiving information and a little bit of a liaison, whereas the case manager is working really directly and intensively with that individual or family. And Family Promise supportive case management services, I've always been pretty impressed with. I also think that their request displayed, like, gave us some good information about how many families they could serve with that amount of money and be able to increase what their current capacity is, because they're going to have new families moving into those units. So that's why I was supportive of it. But to me, it's a little bit more of an intensive direct support to the family versus the care coordination that Tenants to Homeowners proposed.
It's always interesting how one line item has a thread to another, has a thread to another. We're trying to kind of consider them in totality, but talk about them one-on-one. So that's hard to pull off, so I'm not going to do it. We've talked to a lot of our partners about their fund balance when it's especially high, and they're asking for an additional request or a request from us. Like, why is that not met? What's the plan for that fund balance? How does that support your organization if it doesn't support it for the thing you've come to us for, that need that's expressed to us? So, and I think Family Promise, which I actually feel very, very appreciative of the organization. I would, I don't mind being a partner with them or having them be a partner there, but that's the part that I wanted to make sure that if we're moving forward with a request from Family Promise when they have a large fund balance of a year and a quarter, year and 2/3. Is that fair to some of the others that we've talked about in the past?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner Willie. That gave me pause on this one, but I did decide that in my priorities that this was a new partner, and that to be honest, I really want us to partner with Family Promise. To me, I think that's a partner that can bring some of what you just talked about. They have been a healthy nonprofit that, to my knowledge, seems well managed. And in some of these spaces, I would like to see that transfer over to others.
I agree. I think they're well managed. I think they're really responsible in the community. I would like to see them as a partner here, and that was what I wrestled with. So I put it in as half. This was one of those where it's not that I wanted to only partially fund it. It was kind of make sure that it gets flagged for the conversation. I do recognize as a new partner that they haven't been part of that conversation that we've had with our others. I just want to make sure that we were being fair. I also flagged that it's a possibility to give it one-time funding and then reevaluate, because we know they could cover it through their fund balance if they decided that that was the important piece there. So
I also flagged it due to fund balance. And then also just not overly knowing all of the partners just yet. I wasn't sure if this was a duplication of services. And so I also flagged it for conversation.
So it's
Health fund. So, and ongoing is what.
well, I heard you say earlier that you weren't sure that care coordination was behavioral health. That was interesting to me because I think it was in our.
No, I didn't mean it. I
Okay.
don't think I meant it, that it's not behavioral health. I just meant that it's different than like Burton Ash case management. That's what I meant. Not that it's not eligible for the behavioral health fund.
and it's listed in Behavioral Health Fund for
Right.
ongoing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, so I just didn't know when Commissioner said fund balance, I was like, oh, this is ongoing.
No, they're
Oh, their. fund
Theirs,
balance.
yes. So I was referring to Commissioner
Right.
Willie's comment. Yeah, I was aligning with the
Okay.
fact that their balance is
Thank
quite
you.
high. Yeah,
It is true.
yes.
So we have 4 commissioners for this. I want to be conscious that we could bog down on each one of these. Commissioner Willie.
I'm comfortable funding it, but I just know that it's going to complicate some of the other conversations that we've had with partners about what is the purpose of their fund balance if it isn't this.
Good point.
So we have it included for the behavioral health fund ongoing.
What are the various funding levels it says we have?
Looks like somebody wanted to fund half of it. Commissioner Willie put to fund it, half of it.
Mostly
It's
for the
everybody
conversation.
else.
Everybody else was fully funded.
I put no. Yes, I said not to fund it because they have really high fund balance. So I thought that they could be a fantastic partner, just come to the table and figure out how to partner with us and fund it themselves. So I'm all for collective impact and coming to the table, since they are a new partner, coming to the table the first time around and uh, let's determine how you fund it the first time around, and maybe the second time around, we identify opportunities. So, but at the same time, I also said that I wasn't sure if this was actually a duplication of services, just not knowing the roles that each of our partner actually plays at the local level, and then seeing the tenants to homeowners, right, is also doing some form of care coordination, knowing that this is also case management, but not knowing how each individual entity is actually coordinating all of their services at the local level in this space. And knowing that we need to still have some conversations about how all this integrated network is actually connecting.
And I feel confident that we would get quality work out of those dollars. So I don't have any concerns there with Family Promise. It was just that um, being fair to others.
Yeah, Commissioner Anderson, I think those are valid questions to raise. And unpack, I think there's maybe differences of opinions across the community about what is or isn't duplication of services. I think that a lot of progress has been made in the past 5 years in particular, and sort of defining the different roles that community partners are playing and what those distinctions are. There's still room to go there, but I think that there is significantly more coordination and communication amongst all the social service providers. And to the point that somebody made earlier, I think it was Commissioner Willie, like every organization does define what care coordination or case management or direct advocacy, like those are somewhat differently defined, but there's been a lot of work to get on some same pageness, I'd say, across the spectrum of services, and to flag for any potential duplications. I think this is increasing their capacity because based on partially on our funding and other capital dollars that they have, they are going to have new units and new capacity for families that they're going to be able to serve in their own units. But also they serve families who are, have transitioned into housing out in the community, and can continue to support them for a period of time until and unless they are connected to more appropriate, less intensive services, if that helps illustrate a little bit more. And otherwise, I think what I'm hearing is that there was one no funding, one partial funding, and 3 full funded by commissioners, right?
Yeah, I will also say that I was compelled on this one because of the investment we're making in Cardinal housing. And this was an actual example of best practice, that it wasn't Cardinal doing the care coordination. I will say I'd like us to sort of have a longer conversation, maybe after budget here, about whose role is case management. It does feel like, as Jill said, some of these responses are due to frustration with our system, and that some of the people we're asking to actually maybe be outside of the system provide a different service that may be in conflict with that care coordination. So I'd really like us to look at, what is Douglas County's role? Is there someone else who should be doing this? Because I think we're asking a lot of these organizations that are building properties to then not do the care coordination or the case coordination in this space. And they're going to have to work with somebody, and then that person probably can't make it a full-time job just doing case and care coordination. So they're probably offering some other services outside of it, which now come into a difficult space. So I don't know that solves our budget conversation here right now, but I think down the line, as we're thinking about all the different organizations we're trying to make sure are providing the supports that are needed, it does seem like Douglas County is sort of in the center of that.
I do think it's a good investment in the system as a whole, and I'm fine to fund it.
We're going to keep it in it fully funded at the behavioral health fund at 50K. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. Let's move on.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we're there. We have 4. Okay.
got it. The next one is the mirror increase to substance use treatment services. This would be $79,000 to increase our work on substance use disorder. There was some conversation about moving this to the municipalities fight addictions fund. I would say I'm a little worried about ongoing services being, there's about, this would take a big chunk out of that fund. So year upon year, eventually we'd run out of money in that fund to do this work. Because there's only, what's my total, Jake? There's only like $500,000 in that fund. So it is an eligible service from that fund, but then when that money runs out, we would need a plan.
And that might have been me to flag that for discussion about if that's the better spot to put it. I don't know if I connected all those dots there, but I know I put notes on some of that. So it was just for that discussion, like what's the best place that has that capacity? But it sounds like maybe we have some larger discussions about municipalities fight addiction and the special alcohol coming in our future anyway.
And I also flagged that for that fund as well.
So do you want to keep it in the behavioral health fund for now? And is was that where the other 2 commissioners indicated interest was to pay for it out of the behavioral health fund?
Yeah, I wanted to pay for it out of behavioral health.
I was nodding yes, but I actually didn't. I took this one out, so I'm not supportive in general, but I was being pretty thin in my in my options.
Okay, so we're gonna put it in for additional funding in the behavioral health fund right now. Right? Okay, all right, moving on. Next one is the DECA County Client Tenant-Based Rental Assistance. There were 4 commissioners interested in funding that at $104,400.
I think I was the odd one out on that, and I think it's one that I've gone back and forth on. And I think the version that I turned in did not have that, but I recognize that's not really a good use for one-time funds, which is kind of the other piece I had in my head, but I'm fine to have it funded, especially if we've got consensus.
Okay, so we'll put that one in the behavioral health fund. The next one then, the last of the 4s, is the Child Advocacy Center, Mental Health Therapy for Children and Caregivers Impacted by Child Abuse, and that was $10,000. And that one, I think we did slate. Currently, the Child Advocacy Center is paid for out of the general fund. So I would kind of like some direction of if you were thinking general fund or behavioral health fund. I think it could be eligible for the behavioral health fund, but it's going to be kind of awkward with 10,000 of its funding over there and 40,000 of its funding somewhere else.
It's such a small amount, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, it could come out of the general fund. Was that?
Well, it was marked for eligible for mental health sales tax. So that, I mean, for me, if it was marked as eligible for that and I included it, I was just assuming that that's where it would come out of. I personally didn't move things around out of different funds. But I didn't consider that it would create maybe a bifurcated process in dealing with that partner that doesn't make sense for staff. So right, $10,000 is negligible. It's especially after clarifying that it's sort of a one-time expense and they're trying to figure out what their long-term plan is otherwise. Yeah, so it doesn't matter to me where it comes from.
Is this a one-time expense or ongoing?
Staff thought it was ongoing. They came to the table, said it was one time. And I will tell you, a lot of people are going to come to this table and tell you it's one time, and they're going to be back next year asking for it. But we can put it down either way.
I feel like $10,000 towards psychiatric infrastructure for kids is an excellent investment. I don't mind that being ongoing, and for simplicity, it can be in the general fund.
Right?
I thought it was mental health because it specifically states mental health therapy for children. And it was in that particular fund. So that's where I funded it from and left it in that area.
Is there a concern if it was paid for out of the general fund?
I would probably leave it in this fund simply because it is specific to mental health therapy. And they did state it was a one-time ask. So until they come back and ask for more dollars, I would probably leave it in there. But that's just me. And they haven't asked for more dollars. So, and they specifically stated it was a one-time ask.
They did in there at the table. We
Yes.
met with them before. They didn't, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me that. So, or maybe there was confusion. So as there clearly were on several of these.
Yeah, I can see your point, Commissioner Anderson. I think if it were a bigger dollar amount, I might want to split more hairs about it. But since it's small, I think whatever the simplest process for staff is okay with me. And I think if it were an ongoing request, then it'd be a different thing. I wonder if for our 2027 budget process, there could be evolving conversations that mean CAC is part of the larger context of psychiatric infrastructure countywide. There could be different requests that come. So I think that if we know it's one-time dollars based on what they told us at the hearing last week, that allocating that for now in the simplest way for staff makes sense to me. And then the option is on the table that given whatever their long-term planning is, that there could be a different conversation about that in the future if they were to ask for similar additional dollars, but we just don't have any of those details right now.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's
if
all
it's
theoretical.
If it's one time, I don't mind paying for it out of behavioral health fund. If you want to do it if you want to treat it as a one-time request, I don't care where it comes from.
I don't have strong opinions on which fund to take it out of, whatever's easiest for staff.
Do we have strong feelings over one-time versus ongoing?
I mean, I would say one time because they specifically said in the hearing that it was one time.
Okay, so we're going to treat it as one time and we'll pay for it out of the behavioral health fund since it's one time. Okay, all right. The next one, and I will share my screen so you guys can kind of see, because now we're getting down into the threes. So the first of the threes is an additional IT analyst for information technology. This one is for information technology, not the sheriff's office. There are two commissioners that did not fund it.
I'm one of those commissioners who did not fund it. I took staff's recommendation. If others feel like this is really something that we need, I wanted to have it in the broader conversation. I will say this, like there's a lot of requests for dashboards and data and those types of things. If that is something we want, commissioners, I think we better fund the analysts to do it.
And I did fund it, and specifically because of the new buildings and the work that will take to stand up information technology and in new buildings. And I think there probably is a stretch already. That will be an additional stretch. If we were talking about additional data analysis on top of that from the county level, that's even further expanding that. But I wasn't really going there. Just I think this was answering the current and known need.
And as I stated earlier, listening to all the requests from staff and the overlapping capabilities that are needed, looking forward, I did fund the request.
Comfortable including this one in the general fund and moving on? Okay. The next one is KU Innovation Park. Various cuts at different levels.
I'll start. So for me, full transparency, I contemplated cutting them completely. I decided instead after we got some follow-up information, which frankly is the first time we got some of our questions answered after years of asking them. It's still not full information, but I appreciated having a little bit more this year to get some sense of um, uh, tenants that started at Innovation Park that have moved out and stay in Douglas County and are paying taxes. I still think there's a lot more to unpack there, but for me, I landed on $100,000 cut. I don't think that we need to subsidize their budget as much as we have historically based on how much their budget has grown in all other areas. It feels a little bit like we're subsidizing university activity and private business activity without having a clear understanding on the return on investment.
My intention was full funding on this, but I'm not sure that's what came through in my spreadsheet. So I might have been flagged when I didn't intend to for that.
I didn't have quite as big as a reduction as Commissioner Reed did, but I did have a reduction, and the rationale is I have been asking for many, many years to get data from them about if their claim is the economic impact is the number of people who work in Douglas County. I need to know how many people work in Douglas County. I think this is year 5. I've been asking for that, and I still don't have it. I think this is year 3 for asking for a plan for payment in lieu of taxes. We have businesses that have been there for over a decade. I'm struggling to understand how we need to continue funding that because my hope is that those businesses spin out of it. That seems to not be the trend now. And we didn't hear like it was a specific question asked. When was the last business that spun out? We didn't get the answer to that. We just got a list of a business that had. And I feel like we continually sort of play around with the commission here on this. Like we'll sort of give you answers, we'll sort of not give you answers. We'll sort of tell you we're working on something and not really doing what we're asking to do. I didn't cut them fully because I think there is an opportunity for them to address the concerns. And I do think there's power in seeing city, county, university partnership on this. So, but I am frustrated with what I see as trying to cloud the asks that we're having and not really delivering on those.
I also did a cut as well in reviewing the information that we did receive back. I believe that I saw 34 startups on that list, and then I did count who had actually been there 5 years after, and there was about 15 that we saw out of that 34. So the question that I had was basically, right, I mean, how many babies, how many startups, right, have actually grown up and moved out of the home, right, moved out of mom and dad's home and moved out into the community, right, and are now paying taxes. And to your point, Commissioner Kelly, maybe one has actually done that, right? And so we need to get to that point where all of our babies, right, our teenagers are now growing up and moving out into the community and are actually paying taxes, and we're not seeing that. So I did a cut as well, but I also did a cut to our partners that are also supporting them, which is the EDC. So because as I stated at that table at the hearing last week, I want to see more collaboration. I want to see KU Innovation partnering with the EDC to develop that plan, that pipeline that shows us what that looks like for those entities that have been there 5 years plus, that are actually moving out 4 or 5 years, a minimum, into our community and paying taxes. And if they're not moving out into the community and paying taxes, what does that pilot payment in lieu of taxes actually look like for 5 years if they're actually staying at Innovation Park? So I cut them each by 75,000. And then I noticed that there's also is it like a bond payment? Is that there was a tax payment? What was that other one? KU?
The
Okay.
West
I
facility.
think we're done.
Yeah. Oh, no.
No,
sorry.
there was another payment
You're
on
right.
there. There's a shared payment.
Yeah, so there's the West facility that
Thank
the
you.
city and county both pay for, that one, and KYP manages it for us.
So I noticed another payment on there too that we're sharing with another entity for that space, nonprofit, non-taxable entity. I also cut that as well. So because we need to move forward with the plan for all entities to figure out what that looks like. We need better collaboration. We need to actually see a plan moving forward so that we actually can be recouping some of these costs, because at this point, we're not. We have a form of partnership, we have a form of collaboration, but the county at this point, we're not seeing our return on that investment.
Sarah, the west property is on the tax rolls, is that correct? It's not endowment land.
I don't know. I'd have to check to see if it's on the tax rolls or not. I don't think it is.
That's a loan payment we make, right?
It
says bond payment.
Bond
yes,
payment,
yeah.
I
So-
think we're probably tied to that.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can cut that one.
I'd like to look into that. I don't know that we can, I need to brush up on it.
Okay.
So I certainly hear the longstanding conversations and questions that the commission has had with KO Innovation Park. I also think that if we, as a county commission, want to be a part of economic development at all in the conversation, I think this is our number one big driver and the kind of the avenue into conversations that we're still needing to get further on with our other partners also. I find the work that they're doing pretty exciting in our community as far as diversifying our economy. The jobs that they're adding are not nonprofits. They're not, so the majority of our drivers in our economy are, we have government, we have KU, we have nonprofits, and we have less and less in the private sector compared to our counties to the east and west. So this is the driver that's getting us that economic diversity and getting us away from just kind of those nonprofit and government type segments. So I like that and I value that a lot. I think that whatever funding level we come to, which again, I'm okay with the full funding, would be, I think we tie that to a fully fledged plan for a pilot payment in lieu of taxes program or companies graduating onto the tax rolls plan. It's heard some things breaking loose with that, but you're right, we do not have a plan in place. We don't have something that we have authorized or that we've come to about that. So that's just one possibility that I would think of, tying it to the thing that we've been asking for and make sure that we can see it. And if they can follow through with it, I think we're all stronger for it. And if they can't, then we'd know.
I think I put this in at full funding, but I don't object if it's less than that.
It did clarify that the West is a bond payment, so I don't think we can cut that without changing our agreement. We've had conversations over the years about should we sell that property? So I would say that I know KYP thinks we should get out from under it, but it's this wet lab space that's very difficult for us to come by. And that's, there's wet lab space in that West facility as well as KYP.
So I heard cuts of 75. Mine was 25, yours was 100. Okay. And then one said we could cut some and one fully funding. So it does seem like we'll need to cut back a little bit here based on sort of where we're standing now.
What is the total currently on that?
50.
Sorry, it's 175 is the current.
175.
And the city contributes 200,000. We used to be equal partners in that, and the county went backwards a little bit, and then KU also puts in 200,000. Is that right?
I know the chamber puts in, I think around 200,000. I'm not sure what KU's direct
I'm not positive either.
contribution is.
I could go with 150.
I would encourage my fellow commissioners to consider a slightly deeper cut than that. I think that, I mean, they have significant revenues otherwise, and I can appreciate, there is good work being done. I have no doubt about that. But what I want them to hear me say again is, I don't think that they're telling that story well, and they certainly haven't figured out how to make that case, I think, to local governments in a way that is like compelling and has tangible dollars or other investment. The idea that we're diversifying the job market and increasing, having highly technical jobs available here. I believe that all those things are positive. But I do not think that they have been acting as a very strong partner for us. And I think that maintaining some investment in order to continue to be a partner in that space and help push further and help them tell their story better. But I don't think $25,000 cut sends a very significant message. So I would advocate for at least 50,000.
I agree. And I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Willie. I also agree that they are doing good work. But I think it also needs to be a deeper cut. I believe that they should be working a lot harder to ensure that the startups are actually either have a pilot, payment in lieu of taxes, or are truly moving out into the community and paying taxes and really working to contribute taxes back into the community. And I'll just leave it at that.
So a third of a cut to their budget would be 58,275. That would be cutting it by a third.
And I think that the $25,000 cut that, I think they would take that very seriously, in part because that match between the city and county has always been an important talking point for them, and we've already got a delta there. So I think that that would be very strongly felt and hopefully also reacted to, but I don't mind tying it to that outcome of having us see and approve a plan.
Well, I would say, Commissioner Willie, if you feel like it will be strongly felt and they're listening to this message and you're on that board, you could certainly communicate. Start doing some of the things that we've asked for and make a supplemental request the following year. Yeah.
Noted.
I don't know that we need that. Yeah.
So we have consensus around a third of a cut, so 58,275.
I like that number.
Why don't we round it to 60?
Yeah, we can go to 60. I was just trying to figure out, just trying to figure out the impact more
Yeah,
than anything.
no, that's fine. Just round
Yeah.
it to a clean number.
Round numbers are nice.
Yes, I would agree.
And I find it to be too steep, but I think I'm the odd one out, so.
So 60,000. Okay. All right.
Sarah, if you could explain the next one to me, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Cost of business increase.
So this was for extension.
Oh,
You
okay.
go ahead, Brooke. I think, go ahead and explain.
Thank you, Sarah. Commissioners, I inadvertently noted this item on your spreadsheet as not funded, but it was included in the base funding. However, one commissioner did indicate a reduced amount, so I just wanted to bring that forward since all of you guys did decide to fund that. I also want to note too that there was a correction that will be made to the base funding as well for this partner. Staff inadvertently left out some additional budget authority that was allocated last year. It's about $24,000. I've made the correction on the master work sheet that I'm using to detail your responses today. So I just wanted to note that there as well, but glad to hear discussion about that.
So were there 3 commissioners that wanted to cut this?
No,
So this was the Extension Council, the
Yeah.
cost of business increase. I flagged it only because I had also flagged the one from Heartland Radac, and I wanted to make sure that the conversations we're having are as close as possible. So we did decide to fund the Heartland Radac one in the amount that was requested, so I wouldn't change that up here then.
And I would just note, our relationship to the Extension Council is very different to that of Heartland Radac. So I don't really want to tie them together because we have statutory role with Extension and we do not with Heartland Radac. You went ahead and funded it. That's fine. I don't think of them as the same organization. So, but do we have, so then we had two commissioners that wanted to.
I was confused on this one because I thought it was included in the budget. I may have left it off because I thought it was included in the budget.
Okay, so that was just a confusion.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna, it's gonna stay in and and then we're gonna add back the amount from 2025 that I missed. Got it. Okay, so the next one is the one-time expense for the Anti-Poverty Community Health Plan Youth Pre-Apprenticeship Program. And then there was some interest in partial funding at various levels.
So first, let me say, I'm a huge advocate for career and technical education, a huge advocate for workforce development. This is what I really care about. But I felt like this one was like another one that was a little half-baked. We have got to approach the school district. I know the school district is hard for money, but these students, I mean, at a minimum, the school district should be paying for their textbooks. Students pay textbook fees and they should be paying for that. They get a per student rate. What's the transportation cost? It seemed like I wanted a whole lot more information. Peasley seems like it was very involved. The question I asked at the hearing was very specific on what conversations have we had with districts, and the response was Peasley has had those. Then this sounds like a Peasley request, not a Administration of Health and Human Services request.
And by that, you mean all the school districts?
I do. We got that whole list. Yeah, I mean all the school districts.
My question was, how does this fit in with their scholarship program that they're trying to fund through the public?
This would be it. This would be our contribution to that scholarship fund. Yeah.
That being said, it was a one-time request. And so they may be able to put that together, but I just wanted more details than I was able to get and more cooperation with the school districts.
I think those are valid points, and this is one that I went a little bit back and forth on, and I did end up including it because I'm certainly supportive of the idea. I thought I would agree that I felt like it was a little wonky that it came from us instead of directly from Peasley, but it does, and I definitely appreciate you raising the questions about school districts because, I'm obviously ignorant to really what their obligations are in terms of these outside of their building or outside of their district programs that are associated. So I would be interested to hear more, and I'm really supportive of the idea. So if this is something that we sort of lump with that, the childcare scholarship idea and get a more unpacked package of what it would look like, then I'd be supportive of that because I do like the idea of it, but can appreciate that maybe there's some unanswered questions that make it too wonky.
Yep.
Agreed. I also, I did fund it because I think it's really important that we support youth apprenticeship programs. I do think that it could lead to possible opportunities for our youth, but also economic development in the future. But at the same time, to your point, that if we do feel like we do need to kind of dig into it just a little bit more, and it should fall into into the same category for the childcare, and that we do need the staff to dive into it just a little bit more and work with our partners to include Peasley Tech and the school districts, then I would be willing to put it in the parking lot.
I do think there's synergy when multiple government partners are working on something together. You know, we used to have contributions to RAP funding from the
Mhm.
school district and from the county, and actually from the city as well. And I do think that creates sort of holding each other account, you know, making sure. And as soon as the school district stopped funding RAP, they sort of lost any way of having some weight on that conversation and how those folks are put in their buildings. I think in this case as well, if we think it's important, I mean, I do think it's important to address anti-poverty in this way by increasing the job opportunities for students. But I think we don't know enough about all the challenges that students may be facing to do pre-apprenticeship, whether that's the insurance, are the businesses weighing in, what are students being paid, you know, all those things that we may be, again, throwing money at something that really needs to understand the system impacts of that.
Where are we?
Trying to get some consensus here. We had 3 who were for it, but some were funding it at less. Is that correct?
I have it in at 50,000, but it was not so much the difference between 50,000 and 6,250 as it was these conversations that we're having of, I don't have a good handle on how that contributes to the whole ecosystem of that hands-on education, which I'm also very supportive and a fan of, but I think I would understand this better if this were a Peasley request. I also feel pretty confident that if we put it in as a one-time thing, we can get those questions answered through the course of the year. We put a lot in the parking lot.
I'm a little bit worried about one-time funding and then never hearing about it again, to be honest.
Never hearing a request again, never hearing any information again.
Well, yes to both.
What's your suggested mechanism to get that information?
My suggested mechanism is that, you know, I know Sarah hates doing things outside the budget cycle, but I also want to encourage staff to maybe provide a little more, you know, to think about if we're working with a partner, because this is the second one we've worked with a partner on, bring that partner to the table and so that we can get those questions answered. Um, I, I really don't have any problem with this amount of money, and that it's one time sounds great to me, but I really want to make sure we're not getting ahead of ourselves because we have fund balance available. I want to be really thoughtful about this. I'm not going to stand in the way if other commissioners feel like, let's do this. I don't want to be the holdup, but I just want us to think about those things.
I'm personally supportive of, because this is one similar to the childcare scholarships that I've waffled about, and it's mostly because I do believe that there's some significant unanswered questions, but that it's possible to get those answers before the end of the year, and then us all feel more assured that this is that these are valid investments. So since, if I'm remembering right from our earlier morning, this conversation about the childcare scholarship, we did decide to put that aside in contingency and have a further discussion, more full conversation. To me, these are very similar in nature for many of the reasons that have been mentioned. So I think that, and they're both, you know, goals out of the anti-poverty plank of the CHIP. And so to me, these two conversations sort of side by side, holding the amount for both and having more depth of conversation in the future, part in the latter half of this year makes sense to me rather than just funding it outright right now.
I'm fine with that.
So we're put it in funding contingency at the full amount of 62,500.
Agreed.
Great.
And Sarah, because it's one time, it won't hit our mill levy, right? We haven't typically put one-time funding in the contingency.
No, yeah. So that's the thing is, I mean, well, we have, and then we just take it out next year.
Yeah.
So technically it hits mill levy 1 year. We could not do it that way. We could, I mean, if we have a good year, it'll just come out of contingency. So.
Okay.
Let us take a look at how we want to do that and come back to you with that, but I think we understand what you want. The next one is the door frame for Watkins. There were 3 people interested in funding that one time. Do you want to have more conversation about it? It's a pretty small dollar amount. Okay. And then the next one, I apologize, and this is, Brooke and I are kind of kicking ourselves. This one was funded. This was included in my budget as funded one time from the Behavioral Health Fund. I didn't catch that on your commissioner worksheet. So it is funded. So if there were 3 people who wanted it, it's already in. So the question now would be do you want to take it out?
Which one are we looking at?
The DECA transitional solar panel, the transitional housing solar panel project.
So that's the one that I did remove because I don't see how it would impact mental health. And then I also did ask for further information. One of the questions I asked was around in-kind support. And the answer I received was that we did have in-kind support. And then I did ask for follow-up information, which was provided. And the answer that I received in regards to in-kind support was that in-kind support is being provided in the form of the solar panels have been paused due to tariffs. Don't really think that that is in-kind support. One of the questions I also asked was around what is the net metering that is being provided, which was the response was 1-to-1, and we don't have 1-to-1 here in Kansas. Another question that I asked was how many solar panels are actually going to go on the 5 units, which is 2 solar panels. And the response I received, which is that there should be 100% coverage for the 100% coverage for the all-electric units. Most likely, there will not be 100% coverage for those all-electric units when we think about the winter. On an all-electric unit with 2 solar panels. Don't anticipate when you have sleet, snow, ice, and you have an all-electric unit with 2 solar panels that you are actually going to have 100% coverage. So, and I'm just saying this because as a commissioner, I have 42 solar panels, and my family calls me an electricity ninja because I try to bank as much energy as possible. And we do not, because per the policy here in Kansas, it is not the best. And so we don't get the best bang for our net metering here in Kansas, even with 42 solar panels. And so it's very difficult to understand how the quote that DECA received will actually benefit these particular units with only having 2 solar panels on an all-electric unit. So I'm struggling to see the benefit that these solar panels are actually going to give if we spend these dollars out of the mental health fund. Now, if she had come and said that she wanted to build new units for individuals to be housed, I could see that a little bit better. But putting solar panels on these units, I'm just not seeing that benefit in the long run.
An economic benefit or a climate benefit?
I'm not seeing either at this time. And knowing that we're also having a change at the administrative level when it actually comes to funding these, I don't believe they're actually going to get the actually rebates that were most likely promised when they originally received the quote. So those are just some of the hesitations that I have at this time.
I don't have any memory and pulled the supplemental information for the solar panels back up about 2 panels, because a 2-panel system isn't, wouldn't be what they'd be proposing, I wouldn't think, because that doesn't make sense for a rooftop unit. But so does anybody else have a memory of that?
She sent it as a supplemental. It's actually, Jake provided it in a folder. Because I asked a series of about 6 questions when she sent and asked if any commissioners have questions.
I'll read it again. I've got it open with the 5 questions, the email that came back with the 5 questions.
I withheld it because I didn't think it should come out of behavioral health. I thought it should come out of general funds for utilities.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I wouldn't mind moving it to our overall fund balance.
The other thing I would have liked to have seen is competitive bidding, and maybe they did that and they just didn't tell us.
I don't know. We could find out.
Yeah, and I'm seeing an estimation of 8,400 kilowatt hours per year per unit, but I'm not seeing the 2 solar panel reference. So I guess in absence of that, I would assume it was a full system. We did support capital project for the building of these units. I consider it as a part of that investment or an expansion of that investment. I didn't really see it in a very different light than that. And I do see this as a way for long-term cost savings. Environmental impact also, but I was kind of looking at it through that financial lens. And so I did include it for funding, and I didn't have any difficulties with that. But I actually didn't think about whether it would be under behavioral health or under our general fund, because I was considering in the light of this is all supporting those units that are behavioral health transitional housing units.
Yeah, I included it. I didn't consider, along with all the other things, I didn't consider that it would come out of a different fund. I'm open to that and not opposed to it, but I do think that it's a strong enough request because of the upfront investment and long-term savings that I believe will benefit that project, that we've already made investments in, that will be permanent supportive housing in perpetuity, and that this, to me, is a way to help invest now and prevent requests for increased rent and increased utility assistance in the future, which we know is a growing need. So I appreciated this request from the perspective. I think it's a different, maybe less traditional, but creative way to come at the idea of how do we plan for more sustainably affordable housing that is not going to have exorbitant increases in costs if we can make some upfront investments. And so I personally think that the capital dollar capacity, or the one-time and capital capacity that we have in the behavioral health sales fund, is plentiful, and it can absorb this, but I don't have any opposition to moving it to general fund, because I think that we have space there too, and it's not a significant request in the grand scheme of things.
I just don't think that the county should be paying for solar panels for partners. So if DECA has a partner at the table that is an energy partner, then I think they should be providing for the solar panels. Partnership has a lot of different meanings and definitions. And when we bring partners to the table, I think they should be giving back. And I think a part of giving back, as the county does, we give back at the community level, and that is in the form of funding. Our partners at the local level should also be giving back. Our partners are based in the community, and they should also be looking at ways to really be valuable partners. And I see this as a great opportunity for this particular energy partner to really create shared value in this space. And I think we get into a very sticky situation and set a precedent here. I'm assuming the county has not done this before,
Well,
but with a community partner,
I-
not with a county building.
well, we put solar panels on the cottages on the permanent supportive housing units that are operated by Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority on the TRC campus.
Do we own that building?
Yeah.
We own that building?
Yeah.
County owns that building?
Housing Authority owns the building, but we own the land. Yeah, they own, yeah, there's 10 units and we own the land underneath it and we built it and then they reimbursed us and the housing authority owns the units. You can't talk about. Yeah, but yeah, that's right. But there's,
The grant funded.
they were grant funded. Yeah.
Okay, so the
there are-
county did not pay for them.
But it is a project that we were involved with and we knew that they were doing this.
Okay, so we're not setting a precedent because they were grant funded. So once again, they could find an alternate grant. So I just don't want us to set a precedent that we're the ones actually going out there and paying for solar panels for community partners.
Okay, so we had 3 commissioners who wanted to fund this and 2 who didn't. Do we have anybody who's changed their mind after discussion? Okay, I think this stays in. Do we want to move it to
The general fund.
general fund instead of mental health?
If there's room, yes.
Okay.
Were the commissioners that wanted to fund it comfortable with that?
Fund it from one time from the general fund. I could go either way. Because my concept of it is that it's part of that overall capital project that we invested in out of behavioral health, but I would be happy with whatever staff feels is the most convenient place.
Yeah, I'm fine taking out a general
Okay.
fund balance. I do, Commissioner Anderson, appreciate and it's got me thinking, but I also, from an economic standpoint, I think I really do wish Kansas statute made it easier to do solar, right? And I do think we have a responsibility to try to do as much solar as we can within the city of Lawrence, and this happens to be within the city of Lawrence. We need to be good partners. You make a good point about like what is DECA's role in this, and I think that maybe we should talk further in the future about if we get these types of capital requests, whether it's doors or solar panels, if it's not owned by the county, what's our responsibility to do capital projects, whether it be solar or anything else, for a community partner? This is a building that we put significant dollars to, so that felt like we were part of it for me.
And thank you. I think you make a good point because the city of Lawrence could also be funding this. So I think, and we may not actually be seeing the energy reduction that we think we're actually going to be seeing on these particular units. So I think moving forward, I'm going to be most interested in actually seeing the energy bills here in the next year to actually see if we're actually going to see the return on investment that we're hoping to.
Good point. All right, go ahead.
We want to move on to the next item is there was some funding at various levels for the Heartland Blue Stem building.
Yeah, why don't we do that one? And then, because like the next 2, I think are fairly extensive conversations. So if this was our last one for today,
Yeah.
then we could move on.
Sure.
Then we could maybe pause until tomorrow on the next 2 items. So we had 3 commissioners who had some level of funding, you said, Sarah?
I funded this at $1,250,000. I think it's the safest investment in funding for a capital project we've had because the building is built, it's operating, Heartland has been able to expand their mental health facilities by building this building. And to me, it fits all the criteria of the behavioral health funds.
I had, a friend of our pros and cons as I was kind of weighing this in particular. And I think some of the cons are like the building is not 100% client base. I mean, some of it's offices there, but we've also invested in the Rockledge project that was partially offices and partially client direct client care. So I kind of put that one aside a little bit. They came to us last year, but it was already, I think the funding was already secure. They already had a mortgage set up. That's what I'm seeing as possible change is that if we were to help pay down on this mortgage, I would want it kind of written into that agreement, like what we were getting in return. And I think what we want in return or something if we went down that route would be more behavioral health services that directly kind of fall under county interests. So I have it penciled in at 1,250,000, thinking alike. Though I think that would be a conversation. Is that amount useful for rewriting that loan? Because it could be 1.5. But I also paired that with removing a line item from their current funding. So in my mind, paired that and removed 155,650 in the it's as part of as one of the two programs that we fund them from regular fund balance. So I moved it away from operating and into this like one-time upfront capital project. I could have been more succinct with that, but it's been a long morning.
So I see what you did there, and that is my reservation about this one is that typically when we fund services, we have a service agreement written out for those services. And what I read in this application is we've paid for the building, we're asking you, and because you're covering it, we will then provide the services. But nothing gives us the ability to sort of understand what those I mean, that is just we got you, and I wanted, if they have a request for a certain amount of services that they would like to do, I would like them to make that request. And not say, hey, we've already paid for something. Can you pay for this? And we promise we'll use the rest of the funds for something different in the future.
Was your concern that I kind of put forward a proposition there and wanted to keep
No, but I see what you were doing was sort of the calculus that the applicant is doing as well. Is the refunder is requesting is that, well, if you pay for this capital project, that will give us dollars to do services. And I think that's what I heard you say, like, let's take their services out and pay for it that way. I want to be very specific on the services. Otherwise, I think we'll start to have this idea where I have a capital project, and if you pay for my capital project, I promise to do these services, but we don't have any agreement in place for those services.
So would you more comfortable thinking of it in a vacuum that we're just investing or not investing in a capital project that is behavioral health related rather than having any, and I say that because they also have other parts of their mission that don't fall under behavioral health.
Yeah, I think we have considered this request multiple times, and we've turned it down multiple times. And this time it was, well, if you do this, we'll provide those services. And that's what I was uncomfortable with.
And I think those are all very important talking points. I think we'll have a broader conversation about it. My thought was that given other partners' cuts, that we have a need for greater psychiatric infrastructure, and this might be a way to get there.
I did fund them at 1.5, but with the caveat that I wanted to see a plan for services and what we would actually receive for the 1.5, with the hope that they could stand up additional services to support Bert Nash as they figure out their next plan, the budget, governance structure, and provide Sarah and staff with a really robust timeline and pipeline for where they need to be here by the end of the year. And then also at the same time, hoping that they will also partner with Lawrence Douglas County Health Department in the development of that plan, so that we can really begin to understand what that integrated system can really look like, but at the same time, also partnering with Bert Nash in those conversations, not leaving them out of those conversations, but building them into that network.
I can appreciate where you're going with that, Commissioner Anderson. But I think it's a dangerous space for us to be talking about how to infuse cash into one organization so that they can maybe absorb some of the shock from another organization that is, I mean, I think that's a little bit of a weird thing to bring into this particular conversation. I can see where your head is at with that, and all the totality of circumstances are what they are. And so all those details and context factors do come into play. So I get that. I think for me, like, it specifically makes me a little uncomfortable in this, in the context of a capital request. We have a capital request in front of us. So I agree with Commissioner Kelly that there is no good, reasonable, confident way that I feel that staff can tie that kind of allocation to service agreement. A loan payoff for a building that's brand new, where we weren't a part of the investment in that building initially. And I mean, it does do more than just services. It holds, administrative offices for the entire organization. I just think, I mean, if Heartland had come with a request related to increasing services, we'd be having a totally different conversation. And I probably most likely would have been compelled by something like that, and the potential need to increase ongoing capacity for psychiatric infrastructure or mental health services. I don't know what that request would look like. I don't want to theorize too much, but that's not the request we have. This is at least the second, I believe the third time we've gotten this request for capital dollars for a building that they decided to build and take a loan on. And if it's impacting their ability to provide services otherwise, then make request for services is how I feel about it. So I am not supportive of this request at all. I might be, we might be outnumbered in that space, but I don't support a single dollar towards that request.
And if there's not a way, or if it's not appropriate to try and tie that to additional services or ongoing additional services or cost savings in current services, then I'm not interested in doing it just as a standalone CIP investment. I also would kind of balance that in my head with like the conversation we just had about DECA, and the investment that we made there was, I think, 800,000 towards the duplexes that they're building, that transitional housing, and then this additional, the solar panel would be on top of that. And if we were to value those two side by side, I don't know that we would doubly value the office and care space there. So I don't want to give it for free.
I'll just note that our current budget to Heartland Community Health is $314,200. $1.5 million spread out over 5 years is a significant influx of funds from Douglas County into their budget. Without a service agreement to those dollars, I don't know how you double someone's, county budget without some sort of service agreement there. I mean, I feel really strongly about this one.
I'm okay to remove my support for it, actually.
Not to belabor it, I do think we could try to get a service agreement if that's what was desired ongoing. I don't know. I think Heartland might be open to some sort of service agreement that in future years because of the investment. But if there's not support, you know what I'm saying? But
I guess I'd like to hear more, because I'm kind of hinging on that. Like, what do you envision that we could get, or what do you think is inappropriate for us to be asking for?
well, I mean, hey, from what I understand is the request of 1.5 million, if that frees up in their budget,
I think they said about 148
frees up,
a
their
year.
current loan payment is 17,538 a month. This would free up 140,880 a year. If that were subtracted from that amount of their ongoing obligation, we would still have a service agreement with them. We'd still have a service agreement with them. So could you write something into the service agreement that required them to continue to invest $140,880 in community care for the next 20 years, because that's the life of their loan? I mean, I'm just saying, you know, I don't want them to come back and say, oh, we would agree to that. I think there's potential, don't put it on not having a service agreement, because they'll have a service agreement anyway.
Sarah, do we have any service agreements to just say we'll provide care? That
Well-
doesn't sound like a service
Well,
agreement.
currently their service agreement is for psychiatric infrastructure, psychiatric payment, and for MAT. So whatever would be remaining, we would work out what the service agreement is for those particular services. So if it was, you know, you're going to dedicate 140,880 to a particular service, we would write that in the agreement. I'm not trying to tell you to do it or not do it. I'm just saying you're going to have a service agreement either way.
And that length of time, does that give you pause then? Because we don't normally write service agreements for long periods of time.
This would be unusual to sort of say that, like, we're going to require you to stay to do this for the next 20 years. That's the part that's awkward. You know, generally when we do capital investments, we've now worked into capital agreements so that you have kind of like, you have to report to us on those things. So this would be a little awkward from that perspective. And, you know, I would say the commission was approached on contributing to this building before it was built, and you said no. So commissions change, that happens, but I mean, and Jake was going to look it up. Okay, they did it, but I know they talked to us about before they built it, if we were interested in making the investment, but this is year 2, I guess.
I think one of the unknowns is what's going to happen to Medicaid funding for the facility, which could end up affecting Douglas County residents.
When the dollars were allocated to Burton Ash for Rockledge, how long was that service agreement?
Well, and all transparency and honesty, Rockledge was our first large community project fund outside of ARPA funding, and we didn't have an agreement when we first allocated those funds. Since then, they have executed an agreement.
And the new agreement, the capital projects agreement that we have sets forth a 24-month timeframe that requires quarterly updates at each increment and requires a reimbursement, submissions for reimbursement as expenses are incurred. But that's what our new agreement looks like for all capital projects so far.
But
And-
this is different, because this would just be going to pay down their mortgage. So it would, you know, would instantaneously be applied to principal. And
It's
you would
different.
need 24 months.
So when the dollars were gifted to Burton Ash,
Allocated through the budget process.
allocated through the budget process, there was no service agreement.
It was included in their regular service agreement for that year. Since then, we've learned, you know, always learning, that we should have special requirements on one-time funding, capital funding agreements. But Burton Ash has a very extensive community partner or service agreement with us.
Okay.
Also, in the last year's budget, the commission approved a lot more capital projects. So it really was a push to us to get a new agreement in place. And then we retroactively did Burton Ash's as well.
Like Cardinal Network is the one to think of. You know,
Ninth
they're
Street.
Ninth Street Missionary Baptist.
DECA.
We made one-time allocations for funding. So now they have a special little agreement that just talks about that one-time funding.
So I guess this is what I mean when I reference like trying not to set a precedent, right?
Yep.
So, because this might be why, I think you said this is the third time that Heartland has come to us with this request, okay, for the 1.5. One-time request, right? Might be because and I'm making an assumption, it might be in their mind that they saw that as a one-time infusion of funds. And obviously, Rockledge did not materialize. And so one would think that maybe one could have a one-time infusion of funds to support their now existing building, even though 2 years ago, Jake, if that's correct, they came to the commission and attempted to present and request funds from the commission, if that's what happened. And I know you're attempting to confirm that.
No, I'll switch. I thought we at least had conversations as staff with Heartland about the Blue Stem project before it was built.
When Heartland originally shared with staff that they were moving forward with the Blue Stem building, they shared that in the context of they weren't asking for
So they weren't
dollars.
asking us for money.
The first request came last year as a supplemental request after it had been built, and then this is the second time.
Got it.
But one of the questions we've had, was, well, okay, this is a project that you're doing on your own. And then that changed, and it's come back again with this proviso of we could swap off the savings.
Looking at, we have some operating capacity in behavioral health sales tax or behavioral health fund that we've been keeping for new and needed projects. And then we've got capital or a fund balance there that we have capacity in. So that's kind of what I was looking at, and it may not be the right tool, but looking at taking some of that one-time fund balance and turning it into essentially an operating capital.
One thing I want us to think about is they are asking us to pay down a mortgage they currently have. I'm going to guess that this isn't the only nonprofit that has a mortgage. And that if we're thinking about precedent, are we setting a precedent of, since you're paying down this requester's mortgage, can you pay down my mortgage? And then going forward, I'll provide you better services because you're paying down my mortgage. I think that would come. I would rather be involved on a capital project on the front end. I think you referenced the Rockledge project, and I think there's a lot of concern about that. I do think the understanding that I've had with board members is that they are bringing that fund back up to where it should be and then asking for funds to fund services, which is the way I would rather it go, rather than say, hey, you gave us this great influx of cash. Can we then just spend it on the other things that have hit our fund needs?
Can I give one element of context also that I think could be helpful here? The Rockledge project is a housing project. This is an outpatient services facility. DECA recently completed an outpatient services facility. They did not ask, nor did we consider, nor did they come back to say, we'd now like to pay off a piece of that. Heartland Radac is doing some things with sober living. They've not come to us to ask about doing something like that. So in the spectrum of projects we've worked on and considered and requests that we've had, this is a very new thing for outpatient services. And it's complicated if you think about from a precedent perspective, coming back and doing more projects like that or receiving more requests to pay off mortgages.
Yeah. And I appreciate the distinction between housing projects and the outpatient therapy projects, because we did not just pay down, but pay off a mortgage or two for one for Artists Helping the Homeless. And that was some years back.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Lee. I was going to bring that up too, just to be fair, but for me, it is a distinction for two reasons. One, it's housing, supportive housing project that the county is already heavily invested in. And we were paying off sort of an end balance, which was, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but relatively small. It was so that they could have more room for operating in their relatively small budget. So that's the only instance that I can remember that we did say yes to a paying down a mortgage, but it was a strategic investment based on all those other factors that I just don't see here at all.
I'm comfortable making the distinction between housing capital projects and and transitional housing, because we did quite a bit with the rest of the campus that's up around the TRC and the outpatient part of it, just because I'm afraid of opening up to so many other partners unless we think that is a valuable tool that we want to offer to other partners.
So I'm not hearing where are we at? Do we have
I'm okay to not fund it based on the conversations I think we're having as a commission. I had some discomfort in both directions, frankly. But if this doesn't feel like an opportunity to gain some behavioral health capacity in the community, then I'm not interested in doing it on its own.
I would invite Heartland to bring to us a service, what they'd be willing to do service-wise, and we can consider that budget request.
Meaning next year or meaning what?
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're 3 against and 2 for on this one, so we'll move ahead. All right. It is 12:09, commissioners, and we are scheduled to meet tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I know the first item on our list here is for headquarters 2024 crisis services. And then the next item is for Burt Nash 2026 TRC funding supplementals. I think those are going to take a little bit. That's just my hunch.
Yeah, but we've made great progress today. I count that we've got about 16 left. So I think you guys have made really great progress. We will update the master spreadsheet with the results and recirculate that and probably start by showing where we are on that tomorrow morning. So we'll frame that conversation up as to where we are tomorrow morning. Really appreciate Commissioner's diligence on this.
The good news and the bad news is I'll probably be able to talk better tomorrow.
I hear your voice coming back, Commissioner Dorsey. Yeah. All right. Thank you, commissioners. We're in recess until tomorrow morning.